This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Pasterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Huss and Remo with you. Lots to get to. After the good vibes were returned to Winnipeg last night as the Jets exhibited pushback and beat the Stanley Cup champions after being shut out by the Panthers 5-0 on Saturday night in South Florida. A 6-3 win that had a little bit of everything last night, a sold-out crowd, a packed Section 316 of Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners. Thanks to everyone that joined us or popped by to say hi. What a great night, what a great game, and what a big win for the number one team in the National Hockey League, now 16-3 after disposing of the Stanley Cup champs and splitting their season series at 1-1 in this home and home. We're going to be all over it. Looking forward to bringing in John Shannon. I haven't talked to John for a little bit. Of course, he's all over the Jets on a regular basis, following them and contributing at CJOB. So we'll have John on, and then Ken Wiebe of the Winnipeg Free Press popping on to talk about it as well. We will save our Bomber talk today for a little later on so we can keep the vibes high. But there was some really, really interesting stuff coming out of Garbage Bag Day yesterday. Most notably, MOP, Brady Oliveira, and starting quarterback Zach Collaros. We'll have that for you a little later on, and we'll obviously discuss some of the things we hear from two of the offensive stars on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But as I was saying to everybody last night at the game beforehand, I think a lot of people were dragging it in Winnipeg a little bit on Monday after the disappointment of the Grey Cup. And the Jets, for the first time all season, losing a couple games in a row. Everybody needed that one last night, and we got it. It was such a fun night in the building, and it's going to be a fun game to break down and talk about. And, of course, look ahead to this big 6-game road trip the team's embarking on beginning tomorrow after practice today. Big thanks to all the sponsors that make WST happen each and every day. Our friends at Princess Auto, Coolbet Canada, Rollies Transfer, Manitoba Battery, fansfirst.ca, the Winnipeg Jets, Canadian Club, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, and we will get to a why not question of the day for our friends over at Not Auto Corp. But welcome to everybody in chat, especially those of you that joined us yesterday, and welcome to you, Michael Remis. How fun was that last night at Canada Life Center?
Man, that was a great game. You know, you think sometimes Tuesday night games don't have the buzz, don't have the energy. You see the one a couple weeks ago here against Utah. But last night's game has two number one teams in each conference going head-to-head. The Jets trying to get revenge for the 5-0 loss on Saturday. It looked sold-out crowd. The game was awesome. The Jets had some goals that were extremely skilled. Kyle Connor, Mike Scheifele, Nikolai Ehlers showing that off. You know, you had physical play. And also, I did really enjoyed the theme of the night was the 20th anniversary of Canada Life Center. So throughout the game, they had memories of concerts or events there. They had images across the banner. Dancing Gabe did a nice feature of his top 10 moments. They gave away the coin. We have a coin to the first 5,000 fans, which we tweeted out. Very, very beautiful, beautiful coin. It was a great night all around, and yeah, sold out crowd. Really washed away the stink of the Grey Cup loss. And remind you that, hey, the Winnipeg Jets are pretty good, and as we move on from the football season, although we will be hearing from Brady Oliveira and Zach Collaros and some really, really interesting clips from yesterday's locker cleanout. The Jets are a pretty good hockey team. They're number one in the league, and we're going to be enjoying following them moving forward here. So that was a really fun night last night at Canada Life Center. Shout out to everyone who bought tickets in the WST pack. We had a great group in section 316. So thank you everyone who came out. It was so great seeing so many people and seeing some familiar faces, but also meeting some new people as well, who may not have come out before and said hi.
Yeah, we're so lucky. I mean, obviously, on a daily basis, we've got as loyal a group of listeners and chatters as I think there exists in the internet, certainly in Winnipeg and Manitoba. But you sometimes lose sight of the fact of how many people are devoted regular listeners that never pop in the chat because they're working and they're listening to the podcast on the way home. And it is it's always fun to meet those people and to get them out. So special shout out to Tim and Marley who came out, sat with them and had a beer before the game. Great people. And as I said, the get together is always fun. But when you go to a game with as many passionate Jet fans, the mood at the end of the game is going to be determined by what happens on the ice more often than not. And we got a hell of a hockey game last night, a game that had a lot of intensity. I liken it, Reem, especially in the third period when Florida was pushing back and, that power play, we can get into that. They are absolutely lethal. Closing the gap to a 1-goal game. There was a level of intensity that it reminded me of the Colorado game, which had a real playoff feel. Maybe less so the Dallas game because the Jets sort of throttled Dallas in that game. But we knew that this was going to be a great test, and I think there were a lot of people. There was someone that came up to me before the game and said, "Huss, I'm looking forward to this game, but man, I'm worried about where we're at." I'm like, dude, hold up. I mean, this is the number one team in the league. They're 15-3. Every team in the league is going to lose a couple games, especially on the road against really good squads. Just take a chill pill and let's see what happens when they drop the puck. And lo and behold, the Winnipeg Jets answered that challenge and were a hell of a lot better than they were on Saturday. And I think proved a lot to themselves, to the coaches, and also the fans that they're able to raise their level of play. And while no team is going 82-0 and going to look like the Harlem Globetrotters every night, most importantly, knowing what the challenge was, they were able to step up and go toe-to-toe with, in my opinion, the standard in the NHL right now, the defending Stanley Cup champions, and a team that I think anyone would look at top to bottom based on the talent that they have, the different ways they can beat you, and what they did last year in the playoffs and say that is the standard. That is the measuring stick. So, listen, they didn't get it done in Florida, but they came back with one of the best performances of the year. And maybe most importantly, led by the big dogs on the squad. And this was the Mark Scheifele FU game, if you ask me. A lot has been made about how Paul Maurice left Winnipeg. And I think for a lot of people, it's ancient history. I think for a lot of fans, it's ancient history. I mean, Paul did a lot of great things here in Winnipeg, and, he is still revered by a large portion of the fan base. You saw it last night when he got into applause as he entered the rink and got onto the bench as a Stanley Cup champion for the first time. I'm not sure that all the players, especially ones that had been here for a long time, sort of share that sentiment. And I would put Scheifele, and this is just my own, this is not, no one has told me this. This is my own interpretation of some of the comments that we've heard from Scheifele over the years, particularly after the Jets have played the Panthers. And I was more than happy to remind everyone going into this season that the Jets were 4-0 against Paul Maurice in the last two seasons since he had dipped. Now, they lost that game coming back, but I think Scheifele is a guy that still maybe has a bit of a burr in his saddle about the way all that went down. And, it was quite obvious that he didn't like the way the game on Saturday went. And very rarely do you see Mark Scheifele drop the clubs. Well, he did that. There was a real level of frustration. And the way that he came back and played last night, he kind of felt like a man possessed. And while this may have been a quote-unquote FU game, maybe most importantly for Mark in the short term, Remo, was an absolute statement game to the people putting together Team Canada for the Four Nations. I think it's quite obvious how desperately Mark wants to be a member of Team Canada. And I don't think he could have done himself more of a service than what he did last night, scoring a hat trick. And not just a hat trick, but a hat trick, beautiful goals, high leverage plays against the defending Stanley Cup champions in a game that I think just about everyone from around the National Hockey League was keeping an eye on.
Yeah, full credit to the Jets. They talked yesterday or Monday how, they really didn't like their game in Florida. And they reviewed the tape, and they were looking to improve on it. And they weren't playing fast. They weren't playing Winnipeg Jets hockey. And they came out from the gate and did just that yesterday. And it was interesting how Scott O'Neill led off the game. Normally, it's the Lowry line, which sets the tone, but he was relying on his top guys last night. And if you want to beat these Stanley Cup contender teams, you need your top players to be your top players. And that top line of Scheifele, Connor Vilardi was buzzing yesterday, outscoring. They're outscoring at 5-on-5 2-0. They had more shot attempts, 21-12. And Mark Scheifele, he did have the hat trick. So, and some of those on the power play, and I think one of them was not on the power play, but it was after 2 minutes where they just grinded away Florida. I mean, the power play, they had possession, they were passing it around, getting opportunities. So, full credit to the Jets for bouncing back. And, it's funny, you lose 2 games in a row and you're 15-3. People get concerned. We weren't really, there was no urgency within the Jets. I don't think you and I really had any urgency, but, I don't know if it's a statement game or what, beating Florida at home, but hey, they're still number 1 in the league and very entertaining to watch. And it's nice to see a sold out crowd yesterday on a Tuesday as well, because it was an awesome atmosphere. I don't want to say playoff because playoffs are another level, but I mean, people were into it. And when you're scoring goals that are that nice, like Kyle Connor's goal or Nikolai Ehlers' pass to Mark Scheifele, or with Connor with a beautiful pass to the hat trick goal. And again, Scheifele's snipe over Bobrovsky. These are awesome plays by world-class players, and I agree, Mark Scheifele putting his stamp or letting the Team Canada GMs know, hey, I'm here, and I'm among the top Canadian scorers, so you should put me on this team. And the team rosters are due beginning of December. I will be wanting to know if Josh Morrissey and Mark Scheifele are on Team Canada.
Our guy, Mike Kelly at NHL Network, who I think has a lot of stroke in the hockey world, maybe not with the guys that are picking the team, but, one of the brightest guys when it comes to breaking down the game. He put out a couple videos since last night on Scheifele saying this was kind of what we had just said, like a real statement game, and asking the question, how do you keep this guy off the team? And one thing that I didn't notice, but was interesting that Mike pointed out, and I think coming out of last night's game was a perfect example to do that, is the way that Scheifele elevates his game in the big moments. Now, he's got 309 goals in 816 career games. He's got 21 goals in 42 playoff games against tougher competition, against, under the bright lights of the playoffs with, all of the pressure that comes with it. So there is something to be said for Scheifele's history in the playoffs, I think, because these games are going to be ultra competitive and tense. And I mean, these aren't 7-game series. These are packing them into one game with the best on best in the world and everything that comes with it. That hat trick last night against a Florida team that everybody knows is right now the team to beat in the NHL, despite what the records are early on, could only help his case in a big, big way. And I think Josh has already put himself in a situation that he is most likely to be on the team. And this isn't any fault of Scheifele's. It's just that Canada has so much incredible talent up front and so many options that there are no guarantees. And listen, Scheifele won't be a lock, despite what some people say, until his name is announced on that club. But I'll tell you what, it's seemingly, I think we'd be foolish not to think that that's a big motivating factor right now, in addition to the pride that this team has had in building what they've done so far with that 15-3, now 16-3 start against the Stanley Cup champs.
Yeah, Jacob Stallers, contributor to Sportsnet.ca and here WST Sunday Live, has some stats out today saying Scheifele 4th in goals per game and 6th in points per game among Canadian forwards. He's also one of the top passers in the league if you go by primary assists per game. That's the first assist test, not the second courtesy assist, that they hand out sometimes. So Mark Scheifele could certainly be an asset to Team Canada, whether it's at center or on the wing. We've seen him represent Canada at the juniors and Worlds as well. And give us, I don't know, I think Jets fans might be torn if you have Team USA with Kyle Connor and Connor Hellebuck, but it would be nice to have some Canadians on Mark Scheifele and Josh Morrissey on Team Canada. And Greg Wyshynski did tweet out today that the rosters for that are going to be unveiled Wednesday, December 4. So that is 2 weeks away at a special on Sportsnet at 5:30 Central Time.
I'll tell you what, Reem. Okay, so it's December 4th. We saw what Scheif did last night. You're a big DFS guy, taking daily fantasy. You better throw 55 in your lineup every single game until the 4th of December. I think he is going to be absolutely flooring it and playing with... listen, a passion that the entire team has brought all season long. I don't want to make this about just an individual goal, but, for guys like Scheifele, their entire career has missed out this opportunity to play best on best. And Scheifele's famously been that guy that's worked doing everything he can to try to put himself in the group of stars in the National Hockey League. Now, obviously, Connor McDavid is Connor McDavid, but you got to love a guy that's trying to chase a guy like that down, and now in this case, be a teammate of his. So I was really excited for the win and the team, but also excited the way Mark stepped up in a game against his old coach that I think he wanted a little bit more than just a regular Tuesday night game at home in the middle of November. And you add to that what a performance like that does to make sure people are paying attention to the season that he's having right now and the fact that he should be able to earn a spot on Team Canada. Now, you mentioned Kyle Connor. We were all there in 316. The first goal last night that Connor scored was absolutely filthy. The hands on Connor to be able to go top floor backhand over Bobrovsky in that fashion was, just some of the magic that we've seen from Connor. And interestingly enough, there's been a lot of talk about that line. Early on in the season, they were on the wrong end of the ledger, shall we say, with goals scored and what they were giving up. They were doing a lot at 6-on-5 and doing a lot of the power play, but 5-on-5 wasn't working. That has really turned around. And I'll stick tab Garrett Hull, who is fair, but has been a critic of, utilizing that line the way that it has been, in the past, although I think has been seeing the results. He said last night that might be the best game that those three have ever played together. And they really did push the pace. We're talking about Scheifele and his hat trick and Kyle Connor, who was the second star with that brilliant goal and a setup of the other. Gabriel Velarde had a huge game as well. But the third star in the game, Remis, and I can't remember we've ever been in a situation talking about nearly a shorthanded empty net hat trick. Shorthanded empty net hat trick. But Morgan Barron was almost there. It was tense at 4-3 in the third period. And the Metsnikov takes that penalty with, 2:16 left. And I don't know about you, but my collar was getting tight. You could feel the push of the Panthers right now. And man, did their power play look deadly at times. For Morgan Barron to wait those guys off to come at him and then hit the perfect bank shot. I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever seen a goal like that ever before earlier this year when Austin Matthews scored it. And he was, they were doing half an hour on the empty net goal on the big national networks of how incredible it was. Barron was a guy that missed a wide open empty net earlier this year, from inside the zone. That was, I know there was joking about that he's a Cornell guy, so he knows the numbers and the angles. He kind of laughed that off afterwards. But that was maybe the best empty netter I've ever seen in person. And then for him to get another right after to ice the game was, I think, appropriate for a guy that's been a big, big part of the success of the team so far. He was the one guy that hadn't scored. Fourth line was awesome last night. And Morgan Barron sort of saving the day and letting everybody exhale at the end with one of the coolest empty netters you'll ever see.
Oh, yeah. I was really impressed with the skill and to think, okay, I got to bank this one in and have it go in. And I kept thinking to myself during that game, oh, man, what a great show we're going to have. It's going to be so much fun to talk about an exciting Jets win. And the next thing you know, Matthew Tkachuk scores on the power play. And you're like, oh, are they going to hang on here? And then next thing you know, Nemestikov in the box. And there was certainly a bit of an exhale there. Morgan Barron scoring the shorthanded goal and then doing it again 22 seconds later. I started thinking, we already had one hat trick on the night. I was wondering to myself if we're going to have an empty net natural hat trick. Has that ever been done? And then we also did have Morgan Barron scoring 2 shorthanded goals in 21 seconds, tying Greg Shepard for the 3rd fastest 2 shorthanded goals by a player in NHL history. Esa Tikkanen, the fastest, 12 seconds, November of 88, and Pep Kelly had 16 seconds. Tied Greg Shepard, 21 seconds. So shout out to John Shannon, who's coming up next, forwarding us that information from NHL PR. So history last night, celebrating the 20th of Canada Life Center and Morgan Barron's 2 shorthanded goals. He now leads the team. I think he leads the league in shorthanded goals now.
In 21 seconds, completely turned it around. I would love to know. And here's a thought. We'll do it. I mean, I want to do the why not question of the day about the game a little later on. But average NHL player, if you put them in their own end, where Morgan Barron was, and asked them to bank it into an empty net, and you gave them 20 pucks, how many, or let's say 10 chances to go in, how many do you think go in? Like 1 or 2, maybe? Like, I don't think people realize how hard that is. And that's why you never see it. So anyways, really interesting. By the way, I'm just looking at chat right now. And man, there are so many of our faves that are in here right now. Michael Stetsky, he was fired up. What's up, Michael? Liz, of course. Phyllis was there last night. Dan, Jets fan, with his lovely daughters, they were all supporting Hockey Fights Cancer in the purple jerseys. I'm seeing I'm seeing Wicked John was there. It was great to meet Wicked John for the first time. Who else? We've got Larry. Tyler Sattler was there. Tyler, I had sat with Tyler and his buddy beforehand. So anyways, great stuff. The next game, by the way, and you can get your tickets right now for it. This will be in some ways a WST holiday extravaganza. Saturday night, December 21st, against our hated rivals, the Minnesota Wild. Season's beatings will be on the menu for that day. So grab a few friends, WST listeners, podcast listeners. If you haven't been out to one of our games before, please check it out and join us coming up on the 21st of December when the Jets take on the Minnesota Wild. Go to winnipegjets.com/WST. Grab your tickets for that. All right, we are going to have some feedback coming up in a few minutes on last night's game. We'll hear from Coach Scott O'Neill and a little bit of Mark Scheifele, but John Shannon's going to join us in just a moment. Before that, do want to thank our friends at Rolly's Transfer for their wonderful support of WST. Great to have a partner like Rolly's. It's been such a part of this community for over 60 years, family owned and operated, as the most trusted name in moving and storage in the province. Their logistics business takes them all through southern Manitoba and Winnipeg on a daily basis, and that means flexible timing, flexible routes, and great rates on your next move. Head on over to Rollies.com, click on Request an Estimate, use the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and supplies. Let them know when and where you're moving and what you're moving. They'll turn it around with a great quote and get you set up to give you and your belongings the white glove treatment on your way to your next destination. For your next move, make it Rollies, the most trusted name in Manitoba and moving for over 60 years. Hit them up and find out more or request a quote today at rollies.com. We kind of dodged the bullet. No snow yet. Apparently, it's not the case in the western part of the province. But gang, we need to get ready for winter before winter gets you at Manitoba Battery. No one likes freezing their ass off outside trying to get a car started in minus 30 in the dead of winter. You need to avoid that at all costs. And Manitoba Battery can help you with that. You can get your battery tested for free right now. And if it needs to be replaced, you'll save at least $10 off the battery you need, making the best battery prices in Manitoba even better. Great sale on booster cables right now. 12 footers, less than $20. 25 footers, under $60. And a 2,000 amp jump starter for $129.95. Keep warm, avoid frustration, and get ready for winter before winter gets you at Manitoba Battery with free home delivery on purchases over $60 and two convenient locations to serve you. Go to manitobabattery.com to learn more. And just before we bring in John Shannon, a big happy holidays to our friends at F Apparel. Gang, a lot of dues coming up, parties and whatnot. Guys, if you're looking into your closet and realize you need to step up your menswear game, get on down to F Apparel at 190 Smith Street. Custom suits beginning at $400, chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and the biggest and best selection of men's accessories in town. And gift cards make a great, great gift for F Apparel, where you can go in and get something custom fit so you'll love it, feel great, and look great moving into 2025. F Apparel's at 190 Smith Street. Check them out online and make an appointment to come in for a fitting at that's EPHapparel.com. All right, can't wait for this conversation, especially coming out of last night's game. Let's welcome in our friend John Shannon to the program. John, what is up? It's great to have you back on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Hey, Andrew. How are you?
Hold on one sec, John. We just got, Remo, you got that echo? Michael?
Good now.
Okay, perfect. John, thanks so much for jumping on. What a hockey game last night.
Yeah, I usually make appearances after losses. To make it after a win, that's kind of nice. You know, I mean, that was as close as you're going to get to a playoff atmosphere for a game in November. I think really it was kind of special last night at Canada Life.
We were so lucky. We do a game of the month with our Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners. So we had a big crew up in the corner in the upper bowl. And, you know, it was funny, John. I mean, before the game, when we got together and had a couple beers before getting into the seats, everyone was saying just how much they kind of felt that they needed that win last night, coming off the disappointment of the Bombers in the Grey Cup. And you know, the Jets all of a sudden being on a losing streak after 15-1. But I mean, for the hockey club, they knew this was a home-and-home series against the Stanley Cup champs. And really, for the first time this season, they got whooped pretty good on Saturday. There was many callbacks to Rick Bowness saying, we're looking for the pushback. And I'll tell you what, they got pushback last night, led by number 55, Mark Scheifele. What a performance by Scheifele.
Yeah, you know, listen, I have been a huge critic of Mark over the last 4 or 5 years, and I have to eat my words. I thought he was remarkable. And to me, the comeback really did start Saturday night when he decided to, even though he doesn't remember too much of it, when he decided to take on Aaron Ekblad, and I think that there was a lot of people surprised at it. You know, the former junior mates, the old golf pals, going toe-to-toe for a few seconds. But to me, that was the start of the pushback. That was when this club said, okay, you know, we've got to stop the bleeding. We are going to stop the bleeding, and then we'll finish it on Tuesday night, and that's exactly what they did.
You know, I was speaking earlier, and again, this is just my interpretation, John. After games against Florida, where the Jets had won since Paul Maurice had left, and they were 4-0 going into this season, obviously 4-1 after Saturday. You know, some of the players were asked about Paul Maurice, and it was pretty clear that Scheif didn't want to go there, did not want to talk about it. And I think there has been, since he left, a little bit extra to those performances against Florida. But This one was different. This wasn't the last couple of years kind of a personal thing. This was more of a team thing. I mean, you want to measure yourself again against the Stanley Cup champions, a hell of a hockey team, the one that, went all the way last year. This was your opportunity to do it. And I agree with you. I mean, their frustration and kind of just showing that they cared to that level of him dropping the gloves, which never happens in Saturday, I think was a very good sign. And it speaks to the kind of the culture that Scott Arniel's building with this team. But the other side of it, go ahead.
I also think that those guys that remember Paul Maurice as the coach, I think they've probably grown a little tired of hearing about what a great coach Paul Maurice is or was. They've lived in a different sense now. This was a culture that was designed by Rick Bowness and Scott Arniel and carried on this year with the change in coach. And I think that's a big part of what really has been the success of the Jets so far, Andrew, is that this is a group now that is not run by the room. This is an organization that is in its own way, in management, in coaching, and in players, all going in one direction. And I think you could probably identify it a little better than I could, but there were times when there were things that, they weren't all going in the same direction. And the way this season started proved that if you can pull that way, then good things will happen. The other aspect of the difference between Saturday and Tuesday for me was just the fact that the Jets were much more calm and capable of getting out of their own zone. And that was a big part of it, whether that was the simplicity of a guy like Ehlers or Morrissey carrying the puck out, but they were able to combat that Florida forecheck much better last night than they did on Saturday.
Yeah, I listen, there was so many different ways I think they were better, but the biggest thing, John, is they were ready for this challenge. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you'd agree. Like, I look at that Florida team, and you make a great point. That was as close to a playoff feel of a game that you could get in the middle of November, in that the Florida Panthers are capable of playing that way for 82 games plus 4 series in the playoffs. I mean, they have the incredible high-end skill that you have to be the best team in the league, but they also have a level of compete and, frankly, of nasty that you don't get very often. And in the 15-1 start, I mean, there were not very many games that had that element of physicality, stuff after the whistle, kind of going at it. And I think the Jets realized on Saturday that they were going to need to be much better, ready to go right from the drop of the puck. And I really think they did that, led by their top players that you don't normally think of when you're talking about that sort of hockey.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I also wonder if that's a difference, and this is a juxtaposition now, Andrew, after all these years. Is that a difference between Eastern Conference hockey and Western Conference hockey? Because for the longest time, the West was the big boy hockey. The West was where the physical games were played. Now, when you look at the way Carolina plays, the way that Tampa played the other night against the Jets, the way Florida plays, this is big boy hockey now in the East as opposed to the West, and it's much more of a speed game in the Western Conference. And it's not a bad thing that the Jets got exposed to it the way they did, because I think there was a bit of a wake-up call and a learning curve from Saturday to say, holy smokes, we have to get a bit more physical. We're going to have to be a little more aggressive if we expect to be that team that everybody saw at the 15-1 mark. There were some really positive signs beyond Mark Scheifele being physical. I actually loved the emotion of a few of the players that we haven't seen very much. I loved Gabe Velarde's emotion. I thought he was more involved than he was in Tampa and in Florida. That's really important. Kyle Connor doing what he did. And then you go back to what those guys on defense did. I thought that it was a fantastic night all the way around. And it was, and I don't mean to drone on here, but it was also a night that and Hellebuck was really good again. He always is good. You didn't sit there and say, well, man, we have to rely on Color Hellebuck to win this game for us. We can win at the other end of the ice. And that's something I think that really will pay dividends for this hockey club, particularly with this giant road trip coming up.
No doubt about it. John, you've watched a lot of games. I don't think I had ever seen a bank shot empty netter ever until Austin Matthews did it earlier this year. And then the angles on Morgan Barron's first of the season coming shorthanded at such a crucial time with such a big goal. I mean, have I just been missing these? Or it seems like that is so hard. We were saying if you gave an average NHLer 10 chances just from that spot to bank it off and in, like you might get one in. What a spectacular way to give the team a little bit of a cushion, albeit into an empty net.
Made me wonder how much the Barron brothers were playing pool back in Nova Scotia. But I don't know. Did you listen to Mark Scheifele's interview with Sarah at the game?
Yeah,
really
Cornell educated.
The really subtle knock that Mark gave him when he tells you, well, he did go to Cornell. I mean that's supposed to be a smart school. They have to know angles in Cornell. So that to me was the joy that his teammates had when Morgan put the puck in the net and then did it again 21 seconds later. That speaks volumes too to me about where this team is right now. That this is a band of brothers, and we, in our business, we always talk about being a team and sticking together. But the organic nature of the reaction of all his teammates to what he did into the empty net twice tells me where this team is and how important it was to get that victory on home ice last night.
John, before the game on Saturday, we saw our old pal Bones down in the dressing room hooking up with the squad, and you could really see the love. I mean, the guys giving him big hugs and talking about it. I'm sure they would have liked to perform a little better in front of him. But I bring up Bones because of how important he was in resetting the culture of this team. And, based on that, you had some continuity with Scott Arniel taking over. I don't think anyone could have imagined the season starting as well as it has. But just thoughts on Arnie's ability to build on what was very successful the last couple of years and try and take it to that next level, and the contributions of the new assistants, which in particular have completely changed the fortunes on special teams.
A couple of things there, Andrew. First of all, I think if you sat with Rick Bowness and said, boy, you changed the culture, the first thing he would say is, I didn't change the culture, we changed the culture. And I think he would speak to Scott Arniel's role in all of this. I think it's a huge advantage for Scott to take over a team that really he knows better than anybody else in the city. I think that, when you sit beside Bowness and you are put in the position of having to be the head coach more than a few times last season, you have a guide track, but then you also know in the back of your mind how many things, Rick did this, I might do it differently. I might change it, I might tweak it. I think that's a big part of why Scott Arniel has been successful. I think Arniel has really grown. It's funny, I was talking to somebody about this morning about Scott. I think that given a second chance to be a head coach in the NHL after the time in Columbus, I think has really changed Scott Arniel to being much more of a player's coach, being firm, being attentive, but not being overly critical at times publicly, and making sure that the players know that when he walks out, he has their back. I think that's a big part of it. The other aspect, and you talk about Dean and Davis showing up, new voices are so important. New voices, if you have the same coaches all the time, by the time they get to year 3, they're agreeing on everything. And you can't have everybody agreeing on everything and expect to progress. So to have 2 new coaches come in who really didn't know Scott prior to this summer, but if you have 2 new coaches come in and give their 2 cents, probably disagree, probably say, here's how we would manage the PK or how we would manage the power play. I think that's a huge part of creating a positive environment. So to me, this has been a win-win with the coach, with the coaches, and with the players receiving the new input.
John, I want to get back to Scheif for a minute. And listen, we've had conversations on this program, and obviously you heard your great contributions on OB over the last number of years. And it has been a really interesting run for Mark. I mean, 2 years ago, I think we all thought that was going to be it for him as a Winnipeg Jet. And then, the Thanksgiving Day bombshell with Hellebuck and Scheifele re-signing. And I do think that having the contract taken care of took a lot off of his shoulders. It was more about winning hockey games. But again, you learn lessons the hard way. And I think this team has definitely done that. And seemingly, at least right now, definitely better for it. And we'll see whether they can fare better in the playoffs later on at the end of the regular season. But for Scheifele in particular, and I thought last night was a perfect example of it, he has raised his level of play to a point where I think we can seriously talk about him being a member of Team Canada. And at the start of the year, I would have said that I thought he was probably on the outside looking in. I mean, and it's not a slight on him. Canada has this incredible bounty of world-class talent to put on a team. Mm-hmm. But a game like that against a team like that in that situation, scoring a hat trick, it's not going to hurt his chances. Where are you at right now on Mark's chances to be a member of Team Canada when they announce the team in 2 weeks?
The only thing that I would say is like I thought it was remarkable last night, and I think that certainly any list for a forward for Canada would include Mark Scheifele. The question becomes, and Andrew, you have seen this with international hockey for a long time. Tell me his role. What will he be doing? Can he accept being on a third or fourth line and playing 12 minutes? Is that something? And because that has to be the discussion. Because I got news for you. He's not playing ahead of Connor McDavid. I know that's hard to believe sometimes, but he's not. So he's not going to get 20 minutes.
Probably if he on the
plays
wing,
for
too.
Canada. What's that?
He's probably on the wing, too.
Well, and this goes back. I don't know if you remember in Vancouver in 2010, they had Mike Babcock and Steve Yzerman. I think they had the 13 forwards they had. I think they had 8 centermen. And they just moved anybody, and if you recall, who was named the best forward in the tournament? Do you remember? It was Jonathan Toews.
Oh, of course. Winnipeg's own.
But Toews played the wing. After all the years of being a centerman, Toews played the wing. The question will become, and the discussion will have to be, okay, if we pick Mark Scheifele, will he accept the role we give him? And that's where, and again, I'm not trying to be negative, but that's where some of the historic baggage may come into play with Mark. Mark will not be on the number 1 power play if he goes. How will he accept that? This is a short tournament. What you can't have is people thinking, well, I'm going to play out of position, but I just want to be there. I will carry the luggage. That's the answer you want.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then Mark Scheifele definitely deserves an opportunity to play on that team and could be a contributor. But understand, you're not getting 19 minutes. You're not on the number 1 power play, and you probably aren't playing center.
Yeah, no, I would be shocked if that wasn't very clear to I think anyone that's not named Nathan McKinnon or Connor McDavid going into that tournament. I mean, it's an opportunity of a lifetime to be representing Canada finally after missing best on best for so long. And tell me where you want me and what I can do. I want to wear that jersey and be a part of the team. Is Josh Morrissey on your team, John?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's to me, it's part of the growth of Josh, and as I have said numerous times, whether it be on radio or television, this is the next step in Josh Morrissey getting to the level of being one of the premier defensemen and being acknowledged as one of the premier defensemen in the National Hockey League, so he can join the Norris Trophy discussion.
Hey, just before we go, we're having so much fun talking about this hockey team and the way they've started. I mean, you have maybe the best connections in the entire hockey world, and I were talking to people outside of the market on a daily basis. You probably know that you spend a lot of time following and covering the Winnipeg Jets. What are your conversations with people that maybe don't get a chance to see this hockey club very much when they're asking you about what the heck's going on in Winnipeg?
Well, the question for the first month was, are they real? And then the next question is, why are they real? And then everybody just started to realize how good Connor Hellebuck was again. But Winnipeg, like Carolina, like the dreaded Toronto Maple Leafs, it doesn't matter what happens in the regular season. It doesn't matter. This team has to perform in the playoffs. And invariably, every conversation you have about the Jets is, wow, they're deep. You know, Adam Lowry's maybe one of the best two-way forwards in the game. What's going on with Scheifele? But you know what? They better last more than 9 days in April. And that's the real challenge for Winnipeg. And it is going to be a conversation that it will occur between now and the end of the regular season. As good as they're going to be, 110 points last year, 52 victories, but what are you going to do for me in the first round? And the players, it's going to sicken the players hearing it all this time, but it's a reality of what they've gone through the last 2 years in Vegas and with the Avalanche.
Yeah, and you know what, to their credit, they haven't been running from it. I mean, they, like the fan base, had to chew on it for the entire summer. And, you know, from the first day of training camp, Scott Arniel sort of addressed that. And it wasn't like, you know, you can't do anything in the playoffs right now. You got to earn your spot into it. But I really do think that level of wanting to prove that they're a much better hockey club throughout this season has, in a lot of ways, created the start that we've seen right now in a team that's running as hot as anybody in the loop.
And here's the other thing, Andrew, you have to consider. And you know, when you look at other teams in this country, the Jets have been relatively healthy. Here we are on the third week of November, and the Jets really, I mean, other than Logan Stanley, has there really been a key injury to the team? But you look what's going on in Vancouver with all the injuries that they've had. You look at what's going on in Toronto with Austin Matthews spending Oktoberfest in Munich. This team now, with everything that's gone on, that's the one shoe that will definitely, we know it'll fall at some point, right? There's going to be an injury. Somebody's going to get hurt. How they manage themselves through that. And that's one of the real positives about this hockey club because of the depth. So it's not managing success that will measure the success of this team. It will be how they manage their adversity. And right now, every time they've faced adversity, whether it be within the game, whether it be, you know, allowing the other team to score first or losing a lead, they have managed adversity tremendously well this season. And that's the real sign of character for a hockey club, that there is now an expectation that they can go deep into April and May.
Well, listen, you play like that last night against top teams, and we'll be having some more real fun conversations about them. Hey, just on the way, you mentioned a certain superstar in Toronto that is in Munich, Germany right now. I know Brad Treliving said, hey, nothing to see here yesterday, but how hot are the panic levels in and around Leafs Nation right now, knowing that the 34 is overseas?
Well, they're 5-1 without him.
yeah, good point.
But you know, they've got a few other injuries going on at this point too. I think they got 6 regulars out of the lineup tonight against Vegas, so it'll be a real challenge. As far as Matthews goes, I mean, you can only trust and believe what people are telling you. The one thing that, if you connect the dots, remember Austin spent his first year of professional hockey in Switzerland. He's very familiar with some of the medical stuff that goes on in Europe that can't be done in Canada or the United States. So this is just a logical progression of somebody trying to be safe with their body. Again, knowing full well, like in Winnipeg, in Toronto, it's not how healthy you are in November, it's how healthy you are in April.
John, can't thank you enough for jumping on. Fun conversations talking about the Jets right now, but this was a really great one. Continued success, and love your contributions over on the Superstation on CGOB, and hopefully we can do this again soon. Thanks again for the time.
You guys know if you call, the answer will always be yes.
You're the best, John. We really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Cheers.
All right, there's John Shannon. Of course, you can hear John as a regular contributor on Winnipeg Jets hockey broadcasts with Kelly and the gang over on OB. All right, we're going to get Wiebe jumping on in about 5 minutes. But we do have some pretty good stuff from Coach Arniel and Mark Scheifele from last night. Let's get this number one, because I think the whole question, and Scott Arniel talked about it, didn't like the way they played, thought they were a little slow, which is certainly not the calling card of the Winnipeg Jets, or wasn't through the first 16 games. And Rennie asked Arniel just his thoughts on the Jets getting back to their game and the performance that won them that game last night.
The first 15 minutes of that game looked like it may have been a continuation of that first game, but there was a lot of chances they had, but it always seemed like their sticks were tied up at the last second, and there weren't a lot of clean shots. Is that an example of the details you were talking about that needed to be right tonight?
Yeah, I think that they're real good at it. They're real good at being heavy on sticks. I just thought our battle level went way up tonight. Throughout. And I thought at the start of the game their battle level was really good, and we knew it was going to have to be that way. They're a heavy team; they play hard and they come at you. And I thought we did a fantastic job of turning the tide and going and playing our game and getting out and getting after them.
They really come at you on their penalty kill, and I don't know if this is something I'm reading too much into, but were you basically snapping the puck around on the perimeter, having them, because you knew they were going to chase you, and maybe it kind of tired them out and allowed for some success that you had later on in power plays after long possessions?
Yeah, we saw that pressure down in their building. They didn't have a lot, but at the end of the day, the ones they did, we knew they were going to come, and they're an aggressive group. It's just something that's their kind of how they go about their PK, and when you have it's when you get more and more of them like we did. We got some extended time on a power play. Now you're going to get those guys stuck out there. They're going to get tired, and that's kind of what happened on kind of both goals. We will kind of wore them down. We did move it. We shot the puck, retrieved it, outnumbered them on pucks, and obviously stayed with it and scored some goals off those.
All right, there's head coach Scott Arniel post game last night. Listen, we kind of talked a lot more about an empty netter than we normally would, and actually there was two of them last night. But it was getting pretty tense there late in the game with the Jets killing a penalty, up 1 goal late in the final 2 minutes, and Morgan Barron to the rescue, bringing out the protractor for the bank shot, and then another one 21 seconds later. Here's what Arnie had to say about the insurance goals from Morgan Barron.
Obviously, Florida, they weren't going away. It seemed like even though we got up, maybe some other opponents might back off and call it a night. They didn't. You can tell they're champs for a reason. They kept coming, and it took all those, those shorthanded goals to kind of end it. I don't know if he's a pool player or not, but it was a heck of a bounce, indirect off the wall. But it was nice for him too, because he obviously the first of the year, and just to get on the board, and the guys are pretty excited to see them get him.
All right. That being said, Mark Scheifele was the star of the show last night with the hat trick. Arnie talked about Scheifele's ability to come up big in big moments, the clutch gene, if you will.
Well, that's the maturity of him, being in this league for such a long time. His maturing as, for me in the last year or 2.5 years, he takes a lot of pride. Like I said, he takes a lot of pride now that, I shouldn't say now, I mean, he's probably always has, but just in the fact of being responsible without the puck. And, when he makes those plays, he knows he's seeing Barkov, he's seeing Bennett's line, he's seeing elite players, he knows he has to defend. And that's KC, that's Gabe, that's Vladdy's line. They all take responsibility for that. And then when your best players are doing that, your top players are doing that, it sure makes it easier to sell to everybody else.
Now, as Remo pointed out at the beginning, It was a little bit of a different start to the game last night. And I was quite interested to find out what Scott Arniel was thinking as opposed to the normal Lowry line starting the game, throwing 55, 13 and 81 out there to start the game. Here's Arniel on starting the top line last night against the Stanley Cup champs in the rematch.
Yeah, we had lots of good talks yesterday and today, and nothing heavy. It just they wanted the challenge, and I love the way they went out and went after it. That's just I could put them all. KC, JMO, Mel, they all wanted that challenge tonight. That they knew that we weren't at our best in Florida, and that they wanted to turn that script around. And I thought that starting those guys would just be a way to get them into it right away.
Is there any detail from that type of chat? Like, that's a really fascinating inside baseball sort of moment. Who initiates it? What insight can you give us that leads to them saying, yes, we want that, or are you offering it?
Yeah, we had a video session yesterday, the whole team. And so there's lots that they got to see, and it wasn't loud and screaming. It was just obvious. It was just obvious stuff that Florida did that we didn't do. And everybody was involved in the video. Everybody got to be a star, and so I think that everybody wanted to make amends, and you could really feel it. This morning I thought our meetings, getting ready, power play, penalty kill, our 5-on-5 at 5 o'clock. I thought everything, you could tell guys really wanted another piece of the Florida Panthers.
Last one for me.
And I'm glad they're in the Eastern Conference.
Wow, that was great stuff from Arnie. Everyone getting a piece of the video review. And listen, I think everyone would sign up to see these two teams play again this year because, of course, if that were to happen, it would be in June playing for the Stanley Cup. Here's just one quick one from Scheifele before we bring in Ken Wiebe. Mark talked about bouncing back after a tough game in Florida on Saturday.
I just didn't like the way that we were playing. I didn't like the way I was playing, so I felt like I had to do something, get a couple penalty minutes. So, we as a team, we didn't like the way we played, in Florida. So, just a sign of, a lot of good character in this room is that we wanted to bounce back. We wanted to have a good game in front of our home crowd before we go on the road for, feels like forever. So, it was just a great all-around effort by everyone.
How did you like the way your team played and you yourself played tonight?
Great. That's an easy one. I'm so lucky to play with the guys I play with. Casey, amazing pass on the hat-trick goal. Nicky, amazing pass. Gabe, a great drive-through. So, I'm blessed to play with the guys that I play with, and I owe it all to them. They were fantastic tonight.
All right, there's Mark Scheifele. Ken Wiebe's coming up right away. We are going to get to Brady Oliveira, Zach Collaros, and some CFL news later on, but I will mention to you, Rick Campbell is out in BC. Ed Hervey taking over in Edmonton. If you remember our conversation with Jeff Hamilton over the weekend, I think there's a good chance that Rick Campbell may end up in Edmonton, but the big talk, and we'll get to this a little later on, is the potential of Buck Pierce being the new head coach of the British Columbia Lions. That'll be something that we'll follow, of course. All our CFL reports and Bomber reports throughout the year brought to you by Princess Auto, headquartered and founded right here in Winnipeg with 3 locations in Manitoba. And they're getting into the best deals of the season on the Mega Smasher event right now, running through December 1st, offering you the greatest deals of the season on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Princess Auto, ideas, and tools. And we all know how loyal Princess Auto customers are. For those of you that are wondering about gift giving in the holidays, you could probably not do any better than a Princess Auto gift card for one of the Princess Auto devotees. You can pick those up in store, and of course, you can also shop online 24/7, 365, and check out all the great deals for the Mega Smasher sale at princessauto.com. Speaking of the holidays, we're going to be doing a little partying, some entertaining coming up, and our friends at Canadian Club have perfectly timed the release of the second issue of the Invitation series, the Canadian Club Classic 18-year-old high proof. The whiskey is its elevated expression, offers the well-known smooth, well-balanced taste of Canadian Club Classic, carefully aged and bottled at a higher proof for a full-body tasting experience. The Canadian Club Classic 18-year-old high proof was awarded gold at the 2024 International Wine and Spirit Competition. And good news, you can still grab it on the shelves. It was a limited edition release just a couple weeks ago. When it's gone, it is gone. So don't wait, you whiskey lovers. Get down to your local Manitoba liquor marts and grab the Canadian Club Classic 18-year-old high proof, the second edition of the Invitation series, and great for gift giving for that whiskey lover in your circle, enjoying over the holidays at home, and of course for entertaining as well. Pick it up today at Manitoba liquor marts today. And hey, just before we bring in Ken, a huge thanks to our friends at Wallace & Wallace, the fencing and overhead door specialists in Manitoba for over 60, 70 years. 1946 they got going. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, they have you covered with vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences. And if you have need for a new garage door for your home or your business, Wallace & Wallace is the place. Clopay dealer in Manitoba, the biggest and largest selection of overhead garage doors, something perfect to match your home and add value to it at the same time. Give Wallace & Wallace a call, 452-2700. Their team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You could also pop by and visit them online at wallacefences.com, wallacedoors.com, or check out their showroom on Lowson Crescent off of Kenaston. All right, let's welcome in our pal from the Winnipeg Free Press, Ken Wiebe, to the program. Wiebe, what's going on?
Andrew, good afternoon. Great to be with you. Beautiful, well, I guess not beautiful in terms of the weather, but beautiful day nonetheless. So figured we would do our best to keep the sunny disposition. As we saw this morning, the sky is indeed not falling.
Yeah, no, it is definitely not falling. Yeah, listen, we could have had 30 centimeters of snow on the ground waking up this morning. I think most Jet fans and sports fans would still be in a pretty damn good mood after that game last night. And it's funny you mentioned, the sunny disposition. We had a great group of Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners join us in 316. So, before the game, everyone's kind of mingling, and that was a game that this fan base and the sports fans of this city needed in a big way. I mean, never mind the Jets having 2 losses in a row. Big deal. That's going to happen over the course of the season. But there was still a pretty bad taste in the mouth of a lot of sports fans coming out of the Grey Cup. And tell you what, the Winnipeg Jets did their part in turning those frowns upside down yesterday. What a fun game. Great atmosphere, sold-out building, and a big statement win, I think, by the Winnipeg Jets, and in particular, Mark Scheifele.
Yeah, no doubt. But, John was talking about juxtaposition a few minutes earlier, like quite a difference between the previous Saturday and the following Sunday, right? In terms of
how was the post game on Saturday?
In terms of the Winnipeg sports fan.
Yeah, well, no doubt. How was Saturday? Because we filled a bar in Vancouver of WSTers and Bomber fans, and the fact that they were getting pumped made it a little easier for some people to maybe go check out the Bomber House and things beforehand. And again, that made the team 15-3.
Right.
But I imagine that for the people that were locked in on a Saturday night to Kenny and Rennie afterwards, we still were getting a few individuals that their spidey senses were tingling after losing 2 whole games.
Yeah, the angst levels were indeed back to being, astronomically high for the circumstance. But hey, we understand, and honestly, Huss, that's part of the beauty of the passion, right? I mean, that's why I think the interest level is so high in both of the teams that participated on the weekend, Huss. And great that you were out there. I know it was probably a great celebration throughout the course of the week, and a lot of memories being shared for sure. But the game quickly was impressive. I mean, we overblow the whole statement game type of thing, I think, in the media and everything else throughout the course of the year, because, quite frankly, we want to see some juice. But Huss, that was a game that lived up to the advanced billing, right? I mean, that was the whole point of what we were going to see from the Winnipeg Jets. That's what people were curious about, right? I mean, teams get smoked, makes me think of, that game reminded me of the Thanksgiving massacre, the leaking gravy in Minnesota. ways, right? That's what it reminded me of on Saturday night, right? I mean, both the Tampa Bay Lightning and Florida Panthers made the Jets look slow. And Huss, this is not a slow hockey team. This is a team that feasts on its high-paced play, their ability to track back and get pucks back and turn pucks over and everything else. But they couldn't handle the Panthers' forecheck. They did not generate one of their own. Special teams, not the best. And, overall, it was not a Jets-like effort. And, hey, I'm 100%, again, I understand that Florida had a lot to do with that. I mean, they were sour about them getting their asses kicked twice in a row by the New Jersey Devils, and even again looking back into Thursday, Tampa had lost 4 in a row, and they were pretty sour about it and having 6 days off to prepare. So, hey, our artificial urgency is not something that's easy to generate in an 82-game schedule. And Huss, I mean, you talked about Florida being able to play that style of game 82 times. I spoke with Paul Maurice before the scrum yesterday, Huss. It's hard to generate that type of, when you have the game 7 urgency level in June, when you have been up 3-0 and all of a sudden it's 3-3, you can't ratchet up that level of intensity for game 18 or 19 of the regular season. You do your best to get as close to it as possible under the circumstances, but the stakes are never going to be as high as they were in that game 7, especially for a team who knew what it took to get there, having been there the previous June, right? So, but again, it was important for the Jets to respond. The big guns responded the way that they needed to. The Panthers Stars owned Saturday night, and the Jets Stars owned Tuesday night in the rematch. So for me, that was an impressive response type of game. It wasn't just a one-line game though either, but that line was quiet for the last 2 games after a dominant showing on Tuesday against a very good Rangers team. So I wasn't here for all of the chatter about, here comes the natural regression to the mean, and now they're going to be just giving up goals left and right. Well, they were on for 3 yesterday. So back on the positive side of the ledger, and it was how they did it too, Huss, right? It wasn't just that they did it. It was the way that they did it. And that's what impressed me most about the effort. And again, the other guys did their job too. Connor Hellebuyck, the save percentage doesn't look good, but to me, that's a nothing burger. Who cares if it was 3 against? That game was never in doubt for the Jets because Hellebuyck, was steady and he did his job. Josh Morrissey with a 2-assist affair. Nick Ehlers, Huss, I mean, I said this on our show. The play that Nick Ehlers makes is an exceptional pass, but Huss, the play that goes unnoticed on that is Gabe Vilardi freezing Aaron Ekblad. If he just stands stationary where he is, Ekblad has his sticker body in the lane. There's no lane for the one-timer. Gabe Vilardi makes a subtle move. And for folks who don't know what I'm talking about, go watch the replay. Watch Gabe Vilardi at the side of the net. He makes a subtle little button hook to go to the top. Ekblad has to respect him for that split second, opens up the seam, and Ehlers makes a perfect pass, and Scheifele absolutely hammers it home like he was Ovechkin or Stamkos, quite frankly, from that middle of the circle.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that was one of, if not the best game that line's played this season, and they've had some beauties. I will push back a little bit, though, on you saying that the game was never in doubt. I can tell you it didn't feel that way when Vlad was going to the penalty box with 2:16 left in a 1-goal hockey game after seeing, man, that Florida Panther power play is legit. They can whip it around, and there were some
especially 6-on-4, right? Especially 6-on-4.
Exactly. How about that empty netter by Barron?
Very impressive. I know you went over the geometry. I'm going to remind John again. It's not a correction, but there was more to the joke from Scheifele that meets the eye, because Scheifele himself was committed to Cornell before Dale Howardchuk talked him and his mother.
Yeah, he was able to pump his own tires in the middle of the thing.
You have to be smart to go there. I was going to go there. Yeah, exactly. This tells you how smart you need to be in order to go there, which was absolutely fantastic. And Barron's a guy, Huss, we talk about him regularly. On a lot of teams, he is on the checking line with Lowry and either Nino Niederreiter and Mason Appleton. And he was on that line before Nino Niederreiter arrived, and a 8-time 20-goal scorer knocked him down a peg on the depth chart. But this is a guy that works incredibly hard. He's a beast of a worker, power forward type of, persona, skates well, very smart, very diligent defensively. I think he has some offensive upside also, Huss, even though he's the last forward regular to get on the board this year. I've said this to you before, and I'll say it again. he could be a 12 to 15 goal scorer, I think. I mean, I even think he could be 15 plus. I don't know that he can get 20, but Rick Bowness thought he could be a 20-goal guy at one point. He's got some offensive ability. He creates chances, but he's so good defensively. And that's why he's on the ice. Never mind the geometry required to bank it into the empty net. He's on the ice with Adam Lowry in a 6-on-4 with a 1-goal lead, right, to protect the lead. That tells you all you need to know about how the coaching staff feels about Morgan Barron. And the other underrated element of that play, Huss, when he gets the puck, he doesn't panic. You could see in that situation all kinds of times other people, younger players, inexperienced players, rush that and either can't get it out or have it turned over. Instead, he finds a quiet zone, then looks for the bank. Of course, he wasn't, he was trying to get it as close to the net as possible and, make sure it got down the ice, but he made sure that he got it out and he didn't panic with the puck. And that was the biggest thing about that play for me. Obviously, Barron talked about it afterward, Huss. We wondered when he sailed that one wide on the empty net a little bit earlier. It might have been against Dallas, right? Was it against Dallas?
I was trying
to think about this. No, it was a different game. I can't remember which game it was, but it was a tight one. It must not have been Dallas because that was a blowout on that homestand. He sailed that one way wide, Huss, and I think that must have just frustrated when you have no goals and you have an empty net and you're thinking, oh, it was against Colorado. Sorry, it was in the 1-0 game against Colorado that he ripped it wide.
Was that okay? I was going to say Colorado or Utah.
For sure, it was that one there. So, and again, I love the admission. Morgan is such an honest person, right? So when he gets asked about it, he said, you know what? Yeah, I was squeezing my stick a little bit tighter than normal. This is a guy that's in double digits last year. So, I love that. The peek behind the curtain is always appreciated, Huss, and he's had a really good year despite not scoring until yesterday. Yeah. I think he's been one of their most effective forwards in the role that he plays.
I wanted to bring up while we're talking about Barron. I mean, that line of Kupari and Iafallo. Listen, I think Iafallo is having a phenomenal year, and you can talk about the contract that he signed and how much he makes, whatever. I mean, as a member of the Winnipeg Jets right now, he's making huge contributions on the PK. He has scored some big goals on that second power play unit. Yep. You saw last night in a tight game, he moved up and took Cole Perfetti's spot for a couple shifts. And listen, Kupari's never going to be a guy that dazzles you with his hands, but he's got a motor that never stops. And that line together, Ken, maybe not the last couple games, but going into the Florida trip, I thought was playing at a level that we're accustomed to seeing the Lowry line play at.
Yeah, they've been very solid, Huss. Lowry line is sort of still at a their peak efficiency, best third line in hockey. So I do know what you're saying, though. They're playing a similar style of game. They look the same, right? That's
the Rangers
biggest
game in particular. I
mean,
they
the biggest compliment you can give a team.
Other teams, they were living in the zone. I think their shot share was like 75%. And I mean, listen, if your fourth line can get out on the ice and spend 45 seconds in the other team's zone and then come up and change, it's a huge win. And they've had a lot of wins for the Winnipeg Jets pretty consistently this season, right from game one.
Yeah, they've been great as a whole, Huss. And the thing is, they're not just holding water, right? That was always the classic Paul Maurice line. You need your fourth line to do more than just hold water and not get scored on. You want them to, dictate some of the terms of play in terms of offensive zone time and those things. But I thought they did a really good job on the forecheck. The Jets' forecheck was virtually non-existent on Saturday, Huss. I thought that fourth line really, that's what they're all about. They're tenacious. They get on the puck. They use their speed. They can cycle down low. And yeah, I mean, Rasmus Kupari, again, would he like to finish a few more of the chances he creates? Of course. But as you talked about, the motor is running high all the time. They can really give other teams fits because, like we said, on a lot of teams, those guys aren't fourth line players. So when they go out against fourth line players, a lot of times they will have an advantage in terms of the line matchup. So yeah, for sure. Those guys are doing a fantastic job, Huss. And just overall, just the game as a whole. I mean, you talked about the penalty Nemestikov took. I mean, the Perfetti penalty, suboptimal, but I mean, that line is still generating at times. Nemestikov had probably the best chance of that line when Ehlers set him up there. But that line has got to elevate again, Huss. We talked about them, slow start, then they got really hot. They've sort of dipped a little bit in terms of their 5-on-5 play. Not to a concerning level, but definitely to the point where they need to produce a little bit more. I think it's now, what did I say last night? I think 5 of 6 games for Perfetti without a point, 2 assists against Dallas Stars sandwiched in between. But, we talked about this before, and again, this is not a knock on Perfetti because this is part of the evolution for him as a player. But when you move from a complementary role into a primary role in terms of your production, it's just got to be a little bit more consistent. And again, I don't think that Cole is playing poorly by any stretch. He's gone into a little bit of a dry spell. And for him, it's important that he doesn't go on as long of a dry spell as he did last year. And I don't think that he will because he's more prepared for it this year. And everything he went through last year, which was difficult at the time, has prepared him to put the brakes on a bit of a slide before it happens this year. That's how I view it anyway.
Ken Weave's with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. While we're talking about Mark Scheifele, I'm going to put the why not question of the day for Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray out to the chat, and I will put it to you as well. We're 2 weeks away from Team Canada being announced. To me, I thought that was a statement game for Mark. I think he knew exactly that, the stakes going in. There's not a better team to measure yourself against, and a performance like that, building off the start that he's had, to me, puts him in there. But are you buying or selling Mark Scheifele as a member of Team Canada in 2 weeks when the roster's announced?
Yeah, Huss, I've been pretty consistent in my view here. I think that both Josh Morrissey and Mark Scheifele are on the team. Again, and for folks, flipping out over Saturday night, Alexander Barkov is the human eraser, Huss. He did it to Connor McDavid in the biggest game of McDavid's career, best player on the planet, absolutely a non-factor in Game 7 last year. And we know why that is. It was because he was going head-to-head with Alexander Barkov, who is the best defensive forward in the NHL right now. So that didn't concern me as much. And Huss, you saw it, and you listened to the interview. When I asked John Cooper about Mark Scheifele on Thursday morning in Tampa, he gave a pretty revealing answer, even though he couched it by saying, I can't speculate on what's going to happen or, the team being named. But he went out of his way to talk about how Mark is a student of the game, how he loved being around him, and how he's playing the best two-way hockey of his career, Huss. So I know you were talking about this with John. I don't think Mark Scheifele would have any issue whatsoever being the 12th or 13th forward. And I'm not saying that's what his role is going to be, but Mark Scheifele wants to be on that team. He'd probably do pretty much anything to be on that team.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
No matter what role there's going to be played, center or wing, he can play either one. With Team North America, he played on the wall a bit too. And because of his hockey IQ and his ability to think the game, skate, and also his puck possession in the offensive zone and his ability to work below the goal line, Huss, that game, it translates with every player, whether that's McDavid, McKinnon, or any of the other superstars that are going to be on that hockey team. So I see them both being on the team. Huss, again, slam dunk, no, but I think that Mark has outperformed almost every single player that is in the discussion with him. Again, some other guys, we know that because Doug Armstrong is the overall big boss, could he want to have Robert Thomas? Sure, but he broke his ankle and has barely played. So I don't know how you could put – and I love the way Robert Thomas plays, Huss. Covered the Blues on their run, watched him grow into the player that he is. Right now, Mark Scheifele is playing at an elite level, Huss, in all three zones, and he's the kind of guy that can help Team Canada win. And again, it makes me think of we talked about this for years now, Dale Howardchuk's Canada Cup kind of moment, right? No one who watched the Jets would have said you would be considering having Howardchuk over the boards in a protection type of situation with Lemieux and Gretzky, right? So, and what did he do? Got the job done and did his sneaky good play getting to the net, right? So, anyways, I think that Scheifele would really flourish from being in an environment like that. I know John talked about that for Josh Morrissey as well, and I think the same way. He obviously knows Cale Makar. Those guys train together on occasion in Calgary. But Josh being around, Alex Pietrangelo, Cale Makar, and some of those other guys that are going to be on that Team Canada defense, whether that's Shea Theodore or whoever else rounds out the grouping, that would be massive. We talk about Jets learning lessons and scar tissue from years past, being in a best on best environment with the best players in your country and playing against the best players in the game, that's only going to help those guys realize what it takes to get over the top when it comes to playoff time in May, June, or April, May, and June.
Yeah, I'll tell you one guy that I don't think is going to be hearing their name called, and a lot of people had him in at the beginning of the season, was Evan Bouchard. And I'm actually wondering about Zach Hyman too. I mean, and I guess if Connor McDavid is set and makes a real push that he wants to play with him, I mean, that would be a big push. But based on what's happened so far this season, fairly or unfairly, probably not happening for Zach. I mean, this is going to be so much fun to talk about these
unreal
potential.
And Reinhardt, Huss, right? Reinhardt, we saw him the last couple games, like just out of this world. That guy's on the team, and the bigger question is he going to be playing with McKinnon or McDavid? Basically, that's where Sam Reinhardt's game is at currently. Where would you like to slot in, sir? Would you like to play with McKinnon or McDavid? And if not those two, how about Sidney Crosby? How does that sound?
Hey, just before I want to get to this upcoming homestand, I guess it kind of does in a lot of ways tie into this Four Nations Cup and who's going to be on the team. But who do you think is going to be our goalies and who's going to start? I mean, because that is the one thing, like we can salivate over all of our line combinations in this crazy defense. The one thing that scares the bejesus out of me, and I think a lot of Canadian hockey fans, is how we match up, at least on paper, in the net.
Well, this is not a embarrassment of riches, Eddie Belfour being the third goalie type of scenario here. There's no Hall of Famer.
That's USA.
There's no Hall of Famer waiting in the wings behind Waugh and Brodeur in this situation. But I think that there'll be a little engine that could kind of mentality that goes with it. Aiden Hill is going to be a strong candidate here. Even Logan Thompson, the former Brandon Wheat Kings netminder. I know they're in a job share situation in Washington, but doing a nice job and sort of worked his way into the discussion. And I'm here to tell you that I feel badly for Laurent Brossoit. Were it not for the injury, I think Brossoit's right in the middle of the mix here. And I know some people may think that sounds ridiculous for a guy who's mostly been a backup, but the guy was the best backup in the league last year. So anyways, it's going to be interesting to see how things shake down. But I would say that Aiden Hill is probably my best bet to be number one. He's, won the most recent cup as a Canadian netminder. Binnington, I'm still 50-50. I like the personality. I like the fire, but there are times when his game is a little bit erratic at times, Huss. So I'm not 100% sure if that's something that the management team is going to be as comfortable with. I love the intensity, but you're also got to remember that you're going to be playing against the Tkachuk brothers, among other people. So can you keep your head when someone is banging into you in the crease all night long?
Great point, Ken.
Right, for me, that's something that is a consideration also. So anyways, I think it'll be fantastic. And again, I was there when Darcy Kemper led the Colorado Avalanche to the Stanley Cup. He just had to play the role of Chris Osgood, essentially. Just be good enough. I don't know. Is that going to be a consideration? I'm not sure. He's had some years where he's been fantastic. Could be a kind of off the radar pick. I know lots of people banging the drum for Sam Montembeault. I'm not ruling him out, but I'm not sure I would go there.
Have they watched the Habs this year?
That's what I mean. He's had some spectacular efforts, but the team in front of him is also a struggle.
Those people watched night one.
Bus.
Those people watched him put up 47 saves against the Leafs.
I think he just shut out the Oilers too, though. Didn't he just shut out the Oilers or whatever?
Did,
but anyways, I'm not going there. I'm not going there for the number one. Stuart Skinner is an interesting one, Huss. Some success, some, again, a bit up and down, but, he went all the way to Game 7 after losing the job, got the job back and did his job. And Huss, people forget, one of the reasons the Dallas Stars didn't win that series, Stu Skinner outperformed Jake Ottinger in that series. And he deserves credit for that also. And he did his job against the Panthers also. So all of my long-winded way of saying I have no idea right now, other than I think Aiden Hill, you can put him in pen, whether he's the number one or the number two, I'm not sure yet. And again, Connor Ingram would have been a guy that going into the year, Huss, I thought would have had a pretty good chance given his history with Team Canada. I think he's in the mix, but he also has not been nearly as good as he was last year and in his kind of knockout season. So It's going to be interesting.
Whoever gets it is going to have a lot of pressure on their shoulders, and
man,
how they handle that.
And how quick is the hook? How quick is the hook if you're not sure who you have in the pipes?
It's a great point. I mean, you use those first game, and I think we go. The second game is the USA game. I'm pretty sure, if I've got it. So someone's going to get that start. I think if they win and play well, they'll continue, and if not, they go to another guy. But let's get back to this upcoming road trip, and it does sort of tie in, because I really do believe, and I mean, you'd know Mark better than me, being around him more so on a daily basis, but I think that he is incredibly motivated to be a part of this. I think, right from the get-go at the start of the season, he feels like he belongs, and he's playing like a guy, and last night was the perfect example of making a statement that he is going to be on this team, which brings me to these next 7 games before the 4th of December when the team is announced. 6 games on the road and this 1 game at home to St. Louis. Remis, who is a avid DraftKings player and is doing DFS lineups, I have instructed him to put 55 on his lineup each and every night, because I think that we are going to see a lot of what Mark Scheifele did last night for this entire road trip, knowing that this is his final opportunity to put a stamp, not only continuing an amazing season for he and his team, but to make sure that his name is on that list on the 4th of December.
Well, Hassan, looking a little bit deeper underneath the layers here, trip starts against Pittsburgh. Well, Kyle Dubas on the management team. Well, Dallas Stars, Jim Nill happens to be on the management team. And I think the team is already chosen before the 4th. So that game against the Blues, I think it's still obviously important, but I think the selections are already made, even though they haven't been revealed. So, I mean, 3 of those 6 are probably in front of eyeballs that are making the final decision. So, yeah, I mean, I expect this to be a great road trip for Mark Scheifele and his line mates and his teammates. Partly because of that, but also because I think the Jets didn't like the narrative surrounding them after losing consecutive games, and They hear things. They definitely heard the overrated chant. They didn't like how they were called frauds by the unidentified player last year. So I think there's a constant motivation level for this team in terms of trying to keep things up. Again, can you keep up a 16-3 pace? Probably not. But they're going to do their best to continue to put in solid efforts each and every night, and that's why they've gotten off to this good start, Huss. I mean, if you or I were going to the Coolbet lines going into the year, I'm pretty sure we would have I'm not sure we would have taken 15 or 16 wins, right? I mean, if you had the courage to throw down for that, you would have been, would have been rolling in it. If you were.
It would have been a juicy number. I'll tell you that.
And hey, I know I'm not your CFL insider here, but I want to weigh in on the Buck Pierce stuff. We know last year he was a candidate, one of the finalists with Corey Mace before pulling out. And again, that's not a knock on Saskatchewan, Huss, but what I will say is that Buck has a little bit more of a connection to BC from his time playing there. So I would think that this, again, I have no inside knowledge on this, but just for having covered him briefly in his career, I would say it would probably be easier for him to uproot to go to BC than it would have been to go to Regina, even though Regina is still closer, to his, his wife's family and everything. So,
a pretty good opportunity too.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
Nathan Rourke sitting there, signed for a little bit. I mean, Buck's a QB. I mean, he'd be able to call plays. A real talented roster.
Yeah, there's going to be some appeal, is what I'm trying to. That's what I'm trying to say here. And again, I'm not saying he's gone. He loves this organization. They built an incredible culture there under Mike O'Shea. But I would say that there's probably going to be he's going to have to think long and hard about it if he's a finalist for the job this time around. And, I think there would be a lot of appeal for him to move on to that job. And again, I understand people are up in arms, play calling and everything else. Could the Bombers have got Brady Oliveira the ball a little bit more on Sunday? Absolutely, yes. But let's not forget about the body of work that Buck Pierce has put together since taking over as the OC here. And that's why he's going to be a candidate for this job if he wants to have it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as far as the Brady stuff, I mean, they couldn't convert second down. They kept on punting. Like, they didn't run any plays. And, that was the most frustrating part of it. I mean, what the Argos were doing with ease, it seemed, the Bombers just couldn't do it. I mean, and that speaks to a real tough night for Zach Calera. So we're going to hear from Zach actually a little bit later on and talk more about that. Ken, before we go, Billy Hanel is going to be playing for the Moose on Thursday and Saturday. And then he'll join the club. When do you think that he'll get an opportunity to play? And when he does, do you think it'll be for a few games?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's involved for a run here of games. I won't be surprised if he goes in against Minnesota right away. I think that's part of the reason why you want to get him the games and then let him build on the momentum from those games, unless he needs a breather after playing 2, would be the only way that you maybe wait until the Wednesday game.
He'll want to get in.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point. I mean, Arniel was very, very transparent on this, Huss. And I mean, you know my feelings. I actually think that there would be a benefit to Heinola spending the whole 2 weeks there. But I know there's a week off between games, which kind of derails any of the momentum. So Scott Arniel, that's not lip service for him saying he's Ville Heinola's biggest fan. And when you say that publicly, I don't think you're looking at a rotation situation. He's going to give him some runway to go out and try to win the job, right? I mean, that's you know my feelings about Hayden Fleury. I think that he's provided very solid minutes for the Jets on the third pairing. But to me, I think that it's Ville Heinola's job to lose. He will have the opportunity to play probably alongside Colin Miller. I don't know if that's a 3-game runway or a 10-game runway, Huss, but I think there is a runway available there for him. And then we'll be curious to see what Ville does to go out and grab the job. And Huss, it seems like I said this to you 2 years ago. This was a situation of Hilly getting sent down to the Moose for the last time and then coming up and never looking back. He's had some bumps in the road since then, most of them related to injury, but this is it. This is his opportunity. This is his opportunity to stake his claim to that job. And I'm also curious to see if he's going to have an opportunity to stake his claim on the second power play, running things from the top. And that's not a knock on Neil Pionk. Pionk's having a great year, doing a nice job in that second unit. But for me, for Heinola to be an impactful player on the third pairing, he's got to have an opportunity to be on that second power play, because that's where he can really make things cook in terms of his offensive instincts and abilities.
I'm with you. The only thing I'll say about that is that, the second power play unit has been so good. I mean, the bar has been set really high by that group so far. And I think early on, at least, he's going to go in, he's going to get his minutes, he's going to try and be comfortable in that pairing. And if there is an opportunity to get him in, I guess they'll go that way. But
just let me put it this way. I'm not saying Pionk is off the unit. I think Pionk replaces Nemesnikov, and Pionk becomes the one-timer option on the left wing side, and Ville is quarterbacking things at the top. We know that Colin Miller occasionally gets some reps on that spot. I think that's how they would look at maybe incorporating Heinola into that mix.
I'll be honest, I'm intrigued, too, to see, what playing with a player like Ville might do for Colin Miller. You've talked about his shot, very much capable of bringing the boom. And I think that the creativity, someone said last night to me, we were talking about Ville after the game, and I thought this was just the best way of putting it. He has such impressive spatial awareness of things. I'm like, ooh, great term. But
that's usually my Cole Perfetti term there.
Yeah. But he, anyways, really looking forward to seeing him get a chance. Actually, might head down to the game tomorrow morning. 10:30 start, by the way. If you got the day off tomorrow, get down and check out the Moose. Be able to see Ville make his season debut. He'll play again Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m., then join the club in the Twin Cities and potentially get into the lineup on Monday against the Minnesota Wild. Wiebe, great stuff. Thanks so much for doing this. And I would look forward to catching you and one Sean Reynolds on KNR for 6 of them on the road beginning on the weekend.
Yeah, great to be with you as always, Huss. Great day to wrap up the Manitoba Golf Tour at Heritage Palms in Florida there. Last road trip edition, I think.
You said you were out today.
I don't think we're going to squeeze one in here before the calendar turns, but
Cottonwood's still open.
We'll see. I'm not giving up yet. There might be one more on the horizon, but either way, fabulous year, another fabulous year for the MB Golf Tour, and kudos to all of the great courses in our fine province that did such a good job of keeping their courses in great shape this year.
Good stuff, buddy. We'll look forward to checking in with you, of course, in the Winnipeg Free Press and after the game on Friday.
Take care, my man. Have a great rest of the week here.
Good stuff. There is Ken Wiebe. We're going to get to some fan feedback with fans first. Lots coming in on the chat, and we're going to talk some Bombers in a minute. But first, hey, a big cheers to our friends over at Little Brown Jug.
We're not just for the showboats or the champions. We're here for the good ones. The ones who work hard and show up for others, not to get recognized, but because it's the right thing to do. We'd like to think that our good intentions show up in our beer. We keep working to perfect it, not because we want fame or fanfare, but because you deserve it. 1919, the good you deserve.
All right, cheers to the gang at Little Brown Jug, and of course, cheers to our friends at Boston Pizza. Little Brown Jug available now at BP Polo Park and other select Boston pizzas throughout Manitoba. And of course, BP is going to be rocking on the weekend. We got back-to-back games Friday and Saturday night on the road. Sign me up. All of your local Boston pizzas have the Pick a Player contest where you can win great Boston Pizza prizes, food, swag from Royal Sports when your selected player scores a goal. And of course, you'll also be able to get in on the grand prize trip for two to Boston to see the Winnipeg Jets and the Bruins later on this season. Deluxe hotel, airfare, tickets to the game, and BP's adding tickets to see the Celtics and Bulls the night before at TD Bank. Next time you're getting together with your gang for Winnipeg Jets hockey, make it your local Boston Pizza. And if you're staying at home, you can get the great taste of their new holiday menu and more by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. And, it is sort of crazy. We're just over a month away from Christmas. We got the Black Friday sales going on next week south of the border, and inevitably here, Royal Sports is where you need to go to take care of all of that Christmas shopping in advance of the big day. All your Winnipeg Jet fans in your crew, your Winnipeg Blue Bomber fans, and sports fans in general, you can take care of it all with one trip to Royal Sports. Make sure to check out their new hat wall with exclusive Winnipeg Jet hats coming in that you cannot find anywhere else. Royals teamed up with some really cool designs with New Era. Those are coming in by the week as we get closer to Christmas. Obviously, the best and most exclusive Bomber gear around, but it's not just the local teams. The full National Football League, NHL, international soccer, and more. It's all at Royal Sports, and you really have to see it to believe it. And, of course, when it comes to hockey, for over 40 years, the hockey superstore in town with everything you need from full equipment and sticks all the way down to stick tape, pucks, and skate sharpening. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. Check them out on Instagram. Give them a sub there for the latest merchandise drops, sale information, and holiday gift ideas. All right. Let's get Remo back in here. And while we're doing it, let's get to a little bit of fan feedback for Fans First. Of course, fans first, by fans, for fans, no fees. What you see is what you pay. And for games like last night where the barn is sold out and you're looking for tickets, you'll always maybe find a couple of someone that can't go when you're selling seats. There is no better place, no better platform with better customer service than Fans First. As a season ticket holder, on the rare occasion where I can't make a game, I always use Fans First to sell it. Money's in your account the next day after the game. It really is that easy. So if you haven't checked it out, fansfirst.ca. Thank me later, like so many Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners have done so far this year. And a whole bunch of great stuff. Jay Gralnick's in there talking about the goaltending for Team Canada. I agree. Logan Thompson for Canada. And a lot of excitement about Ville Heinola as well. Free Ville, says Coachy. That's an old one. Of course, SK, just Ville in all caps. And I got to shout out Bobby B, one of our most loyal longtime supporters. Bobby B, got to meet your son-in-law and your grandson at the game last night. And I actually met your son-in-law in Vancouver at the Bomber House as well. So you were missed last night, but everybody had a great time. And then comment, this is another great question to get more fan feedback. Would Kyle Walters go after Lapo if Buck leaves? That's an interesting one. I'll ask Michael Remis about that in a minute. But keep the fan feedback coming in the chat right now. And you can always hit us up on X at Sports Talk WPG for more fan feedback. Brought to you by Fans First, by fans, for fans, no fees. Check them out today at fansfirst.ca. Remo, what do you think about that? I mean, if Buck were to leave, you've got a special teams defensively minded head coach in Mike O'Shea. You've got Jordan Younger there. It would leave a pretty big hole, I think, from the OC standpoint. And, of course, Paul Appolise is a guy that has had success. I'm not sure whether he is looking to get back into coaching as much as continuing to sort of spread his wings, doing broadcasting and new media as well. You as someone that Lapo often leans on for guidance in this new digital world. That's true, folks.
I think Lapo seems to be happy with his role at TSN. I think he's expanding there. He's looking at doing stuff on YouTube. I don't know if he has this burning desire to get back into coaching. Maybe if the offer was right, he could be convinced. But I think he's getting a bigger role at TSN. He seems to be happy with that. We did see him at the Grey Cup. It was nice to see him on the panel as well. He had some great insights leading into the game on the Bombers' performance in the West. I'm going to have to see if he's got game tape this week on the Grey Cup as I continue to...
I don't know if I could possibly watch that again.
I continue to punish myself rewatching and looking at the game logs there, trying to understand what happened to the Bombers there. But I think it would be interesting a reunion with Lapo, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I got to tell you this. So last night, hanging out afterwards, hook up with some friends. We go out, we watch we just went to our local and watched the Rangers Canucks game. And then, so I get home relatively late. I've got the Jet game recorded, and I just wanted to go back in and watch some of the goals and just see how it looked on TV, the atmosphere and all that. And I throw the TV on, and I guess I'd had it on TSN2 earlier because I was watching some of the late hour of Overdrive before ripping to the rink for 5:30. And of course, they're playing the Grey Cup. And Remo, no joke, the play that you have talked about over and over again, I literally look over at the TV. It's 2nd and 7. Arbuckle going way back. 1 guy, 2 guy, 3 guy, and he scrambles and gets that first down. And then right after that, the dagger, the touchdown. And John Hodge actually put this out. And again, I didn't go back and kind of really get into the film, but John posted a picture yesterday that on that touchdown play, that the Bombers had 11 men on the field, and asked, how in the world does that happen? I don't have any answers for it. All I'll just mention is that it was so painful to watch those couple plays again. And to me, and this isn't fair to the defense because the offense did absolutely squat for the majority of the game other than that touchdown in the first half. And the passing game was non-existent. I mean, Zach had 6 completions before coming back into the game with a busted hand and throwing those picks. But man, how that game might have been different if Winnipeg had been able to stop them from scoring, or at least keeping it to a field goal. I guess we'll never know. But very quickly after that, it went off the rails when Zach came in with the glove and it was all done.
Yeah, I think the defense was put in a tough spot. They were on the field a lot because the offense, couldn't extend drives, and there were a lot of 2-and-outs. When you look back at the game, I know some people don't want to hear about it, but I mean, on that drive, they converted a couple 2nd downs and long. That Arbuckle run for me right before the touchdown pass was the play of the game. And on one of their drives in the first quarter, I mean, I think it was 2nd and 17, and they had the pass to McMahon, and he ran for a big one. So the Argos were able to convert, 2nd and 10, 2nd and long multiple times, and the Bombers just couldn't extend drives. It was McManus who was always there, shutting down Dembski. They couldn't get the offense going. And, the talk for me about, you can talk about whatever happened before the injury, but the injury was a key moment in the game. And you listen to these clips deciding, to bring Zach back in when he clearly couldn't throw. The Argos knew it. I mean, it seemed like the Bombers knew this was a pretty severe injury, and they left him in. And, Terry Wilson, throws it 4 times, and Zach comes in after the injury, and the first play is, it's a deep throw, and he told the receivers that I can't throw it deep, so you're going to have to come back on the ball. And I guess they saw the coverage, and he thought he had something, but he just wasn't able to get the zip on the ball needed to make that throw, and it was picked, and that was the game, really. And you can talk about all the plays, when leading up to the injury. I mean, that's fine. But I think after the injury, they basically said, we're going to, you hear the Brady clips. And I feel like he's upset that, they didn't adjust the game plan to go to him and continue to throw the ball, whether it was with Zach or with Terry Wilson. And they had the clips yesterday, and I thought it was very, very interesting and very revealing. O'Shea hasn't talked yet. I don't know if that's today or tomorrow, but I'm curious what he's going to have to say as we continue the autopsy of the Grey Cup.
Well, I mean, we did get a chance, and we were in the room, and I got a chance to ask him a couple questions about that exact incident afterwards, and he was very forthcoming and saying if this is a regular season game, Zach wasn't going back in, but he wanted it, and it speaks to O'Shea riding with his guys right until the end. Let's see. Here's what Brady had to say, and I mean, this is some good stuff. Shout out to Jeff Hamilton for being in there. A lot of this audio is courtesy of my pal and partner on CFL 110. Thanks again to Garage Living for a great first year of CFL 110. Can't wait to do it again next year. But here's Brady Oliveira just lamenting on falling short again in the big game on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, still kind of hard to reflect on it. It's so fresh. Like I said, it kind of feels like a nightmare. I still don't really know how to put it into words. I think as the weeks go on, I'll maybe start to make more sense of it. But right now, it doesn't make sense to me. It feels like a nightmare. I don't even know how it unfolded like that.
How do you reconcile 5 straight trips to the Grey Cup, which is an incredible run, with 3 straight losses? And what needs to happen? Does it need to be changed? I mean, there's 7 other teams that did win that weren't in as good a position as you guys were. How much needs to change so that you can get over that final hurdle?
Yeah. With that being said, with going to 5 straight Grey Cups, I'm still extremely fortunate to be able to be playing in those games and going to those games. Guys play a long time in this league and don't end up going to one Grey Cup. So still very thankful for that and thankful for this organization. But yeah, we just can't finish. We're going to these last 3 losses and we can't finish these games. So yeah, I think there needs to be self-reflection and ways where maybe individuals, could I do more in big games like that? Can the coaches do more? Can we prepare differently? Whatever it is. I mean, obviously what we're doing is working because we're getting to the big game every single year. We've got one heck of an organization and one heck of a group. But we're just not finishing those big games. So, yeah, I think there needs to be a little bit of change, whatever that is, because obviously what we're doing isn't working.
All right. So, I mean, obviously what we're doing isn't working. I mean, it wasn't working in the fourth quarter. It wasn't working pretty much overall yesterday, but man, it sure looked great in the Western Final, which is another reason why I think this one was so hard to take for both players and fans. Hammer then asked Brady about the team's decision to throw after Zach's injury, which seemed like a serious injury and obviously impacted his ability to succeed.
We're getting reports out about Zach Clarison's finger. It's not just cut, it's hanging off. And you just win the MOP earlier that week. I know we asked you after the game, but I have to reflect, why is it an 8-point game and you're throwing the ball? Why aren't they hammering the rock with you in the offense and ultimately the guy that got the win?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always going to think that throughout the course of a season, right? I know my ability. I know the offensive line that we got. I think that we can always take a game over and win us games throughout the course of a season. It doesn't always unfold like that, There's going to be games where you have 20-plus touches, and there's going to be some games where you have 10 touches. And you can win like that, and you can also lose like that, right? But I have full belief in myself and this offensive line. And this team, the team knows this. They understand that we can take a game over at any given point if we have the opportunities to do so. So I think we didn't have enough of those opportunities on Sunday, which is unfortunate because, again, like I said, we've done it all year long. We do take games over. That offensive line, you let them work, you let them run off the ball and maul guys. That's what they do best. I felt like we could have did that more Sunday. Like I said, obviously there's other ways to win games, but I did feel like in that game, I think that was our type of game, especially the way the game was going. I think that was our game to take over, and fortunately we just didn't get the chance to.
I do maintain that if that drive that Toronto went all the way and scored that touchdown to make it 24-16, finishes with a punt or a field goal, I think everything is different. We probably do see a lot more Brady. But again, the decision-making when Zach went back into the game, I think still making a lot of people question the thought process behind it. Here's Brady responding to a question if he was shocked by the lack of touches he received in the Grey Cup.
I mean, you look at it throughout the season, different ways to win games. Throughout the course of the season, like I said about the touches, it's, we've won games with limited amount of touches, right? And whether it was limited amount of touches or not in that Grey Cup game, again, through the course of the season, we've still won games. You guys know who I am, the type of back that I am. I'm built to get 20 touches a game throughout the course of the season. I've showed my durability more than one season. I'm capable of getting those touches, and the coaches know that too. But like I said, you can win games. We've won games with me getting the ball 10 times, right? So.
All right. Well, speaking of touches, Brady was also asked if he asked OC Buck Pierce to give him the ball more.
I don't do that. It's not right. It's not right to do. I'm always going to be a team first guy. Of course, we know there's so many good abilities in this locker room, and guys that can really do damage on this team on both sides of the ball that make an impact on this team, and I so happen to be one of them, right? But it's whoever's calling the shots, however the game's going to unfold, I'm just going to strap on my helmet, buckle it up, and go to work every single day, whatever play's called.
CFL MOP and Most Outstanding Canadian Brady Oliveira mentioned being a team player and not getting into the ear of the offensive coordinator. Here's one more clip from Brady on just the message, his message to the rest of his team.
We got a lot of great guys in this locker room, guys that deserve to get the ball and to make an impact. And I guess my message would be, whatever our pillars are going to be and our blue points to success, whatever that's going to be, whatever has gotten us to where we are today, that's who we are, that's our identity. So we need to just stick with it. You need to trust it, because we've trusted it all year long. And then we get to the biggest game of the year, and it's kind of been like the same recurring message over the last number of Grey Cups. It's what's gotten us to where we are today. We've trusted it throughout the course of the season. We get to the biggest game of the year and we're not trusting it. We talk about that all year long, about trusting in it, trusting your teammates, trusting the work that you put in, trusting your preparation. Well, we need to trust in what has gotten us to where we are today. So that would kind of be my message.
Man, you could just feel the heartbreak and the disappointment from Brady Oliveira in those clips. That was from the Garbage Bag Day yesterday down at Princess Auto Stadium. Zach Collaros also spoke. First question up, not surprisingly, was just asking Zach to expand a little bit about the injury to his finger in the Grey Cup.
I don't know exactly how it happened. There's like a laceration, I guess, a cut, a pretty deep cut. Like, how you get the lines in your fingers there? Uh-huh. Well, on my pointer, it was just a pretty deep cut, and I looked down after I threw a ball, I think to Carrick. It was just kind of open,
Like hanging there?
I could just kind of look inside my finger. It was weird. It was weird.
How many? Wow.
I think it was like five stitches. Yeah, they did a good job. They had to numb it, obviously, to do that, and then the numbness was kind of there to the next morning.
All right, so there are the gory details of the injury. Zach was then asked about dialing up deep throws after returning to the game with the numb index finger on his throwing hand.
I mean, I think hindsight's 20/20. I thought that play in particular it was good for what Toronto was doing to that personnel set. They played a different coverage than we thought. That being said, though, the throw to poke was like the concept itself was still a viable concept.
All right, a little bit more from Zach Collaros. And listen, we just heard a lot of questions to Brady Oliveira asking why he didn't get the ball more, and obviously that's not his decision. Here's Zach's response to a question on if they should have given their MOP more touches in the Grey Cup.
I wish we ran more plays. I wish we converted more second downs. I feel like we didn't play. I was talking to somebody last night, and it just I feel like I was on the field for 20 plays. It just didn't feel like a lot of football, And when you don't execute on second down, you don't possess the football. It's going to feel that way. The couple drives that we had pretty effective drives. There were explosives involved in there. That's typically the case on scoring drives, but you need to possess the football in a game like that to give yourself a chance. And I thought we still had a chance.
Remo, and this is kind of something that I've been talking about for the last couple of days, in that nobody's getting the ball if you're on the sidelines. And this really does come down to, in my opinion, the Bombers' inability to convert second downs. I mean, the amount of 2-and-outs and the amount of short times that they had the football, and then Jamison Sheehan was coming out to punch in Arian Grant, was significant. And to the Argos' credit, they found a way to move those chains, and that's why they dominated time of possession the way they did. And that's why the Bombers ran so few plays, which inevitably is going to turn into less touches for your most important and most effective offensive player.
Yeah, not being able to extend drives hurt them. The lucky Whitehead fumble on special teams, you think you're getting the ball back from a punt, and you don't, and then they score a touchdown off that. We haven't really mentioned that, but that was a pretty key moment of the game. But, I just think when you look at from the moment Zach went injured on, if you're Brady, you're thinking, hey, I'm the MOP, our quarterback's out, why aren't you giving me the ball? Why are you letting a guy who doesn't have a fully healthy finger make deep throws that are getting intercepted? So I can see why there would be frustration for him if you can detect any from what he said. But from Zach's case, they're probably thinking, hey, the Argos know, or they're trying to stack the box here so we can't run, so we're going to try to throw. But when you can't get 100% on the ball, it's going to be tough to make deep completions. So I think that's where a lot of the questions are, should Zach have even been in the game? And I think Jeff wants to ask Mike O'Shea that whenever he speaks. Credit to Jeff and John Hodge and the reporters. They're asking some of the tough questions as we try to figure out what went wrong here for the Blue Bombers in the Grey Cup.
Listen, there's no shortage of tough questions after you fall short in that fashion, and even more so when it's the third consecutive time you've come up short as a favorite in the championship game. Listen, lots of talk about the way the offense was run from fans, as well as questions from the media. If you joined us late today, Rick Campbell is out as the head coach of the BC Lions. Speculation that he might end up in Edmonton, but there is a vacancy in BC. And Buck Pierce, being a former Lion, being a guy that wants the opportunity to be a head coach, is certainly going to be a name we hear a lot about. Zach was asked if he wants to see Buck Pierce return.
Buck's a guy that I've worked with now for the last 5 years. He's a really, really great person to work with, easy to work with. Obviously, I think we'd want him back. That being said, he's a hot commodity, to use your term there, for a reason. We've had success on offense, and whatever he decides he'll make the right decision for him and his family. So those kind of opportunities come from success, so he deserves that.
A little bit of interesting comment on Buck Pierce and Zach Collaros and their relationship, the success that they've had, but unfortunately, particularly for Zach, the lack of success in these last three championship games where he never threw for a touchdown, and obviously had multiple picks, especially late in the fourth quarter. Speaking of that fourth quarter, this is what Zach had to say about the fourth quarter game plan.
I haven't gone back to watch it. In the moment there, the turnover, the first interception there, but after I came back in the game, what would that put us down, 11? I think after that. to be quite honest with you, after that, it kind of seems like we were just in hurry up kind of stuff to try to score and try to get the football back. So I'd have to go back and watch it, Jeff, and I haven't done it yet.
I think that's what was so perplexing about it, is that Mike is like calculated. Mike thinks, when there's 45 seconds on the clock, Mike thinks there's like 20 minutes on it. And so with half a quarter left, down by 8, with an MOP running back and a finger that is hanging off, like who's the adult in the building to this point, realizing, why wouldn't you stick with the bread and butter in the run game? Why would this team be constantly dialing up, putting this in your hands when your finger's literally hanging?
Yeah, again, I appreciate the faith, that Buck has in me, so if you ask me to throw the ball, I'm gonna throw the ball. I want to throw the ball, so I'm not gonna argue against that. Was I having a hard time gripping the football? Yes, but in those moments, like you're in the field, you're in the swing of the game, you're feeling the game out. You're adding to that feeling, what Toronto has been playing all game long and how they've been playing the run, how they've been playing the pass, and at that point in the game, Buck thought it was appropriate to call the plays that he called. That's the best I can give you, honestly.
The answer was good. The questioning was absolutely elite, and this topic, I guess, continued. And Zach was asked, just about the process of putting him back in, and how much is that on the coaches, and how much is that on a player that knows that they are not at 100%.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke to Osh, spoke to Buck. I mean, obviously talked with Al. Yeah, I can really only talk about myself. The hardest part, and I've talked to the guys, a lot of the guys afterward. The thing you're dealing with mentally is like, am I being selfish to want to go back in here, even though I don't feel like I can necessarily help to my best ability? And the other side of that is, am I being selfish for bailing on the guys? So kind of that playing out in my head, to be quite honest with you, that was that 90 seconds, 120 seconds of, throwing the ball with Drew and Chris there, shit, I don't know if I can't really throw, but I thought I was as honest as I could be to Buck there, and Osh, said, yeah, go. So again, Osh has played at the highest level in the biggest games, and he understands moments like that, and how much you put into it and how much you care for your teammates, so he trusted me, and I appreciate that. And he knows it was in the right, my heart was in the right spot. It wasn't, I don't think I was being selfish because I just, hey, it's my team, I want to go out there. It was not like I just want to be out there with the guys, and I think I can help,
And Reem, that's a really interesting, and granted, a really introspective answer from Zach. I mean, he is one of the leaders on this team, and has brought them to where they got them. I do kind of still wonder if that is an easier decision or a more logical decision if the Winnipeg Blue Bombers had a backup quarterback that was more ready for the bright lights of the Grey Cup. And I really don't think that they had that. I mean, we saw Terry Wilson go in there, and the first throw that he put up should have been picked, and the Bombers were very fortunate that it wasn't, and they ended up getting a field goal. But, I mean, put it this way. Say this exact scenario happened last year in the Grey Cup, and Drew Brown is on the sidelines. I would suggest that there is a much greater chance that cooler heads would have prevailed. And I mean, listen, you and I were sitting right beside there in the corner. We saw Zach come out and start throwing that football with Strevler and the guys that were there. I mean, there wasn't anything remotely close to a normal spiral from Zach when it was coming out of his hand, and you could see him playing with it. I get trying to be a warrior, and I get trying to go out there, but at some point, to quote Hammer, there needs to sort of be an adult in the room that says, wait a second, this is kind of a recipe for disaster. And unfortunately, they went headfirst into that situation and it blew up spectacularly.
Yeah, when he was hurt, I was like, oh, is Terry Wilson going to come and do the Drew Brown? Remember, was it the first game last year where Zach had to leave for concussion protocol and you think they're hooped and Drew Brown leads them to a victory? And full credit to Zach for coming out and being honest about what happened and answering the questions. We're all wondering, and I'm sure it is definitely not easy. But I think, you had to look at the situation. Like, as you said, he couldn't really throw. Ryan Dinwiddie said they saw him throwing on the sideline. They knew they were going to win. Maybe you do ride with Terry Wilson or Joel Agala and maybe get creative, running plays. It is surprising that, he's hurt and they don't run the ball once. It was still a close game. They were down 1 score when he came back in. When Terry Wilson was in there in the red zone after the Jefferson turnover, and he throws it 4 times. I just thought, as far as if you want to say, hey, should they have ran the ball more? Those are times where you're in the red zone. They went to Brady once with a throw. It didn't work. He threw to Lawler in the end zone, almost got picked off. And the other one to Weedfall, Lawler was offside, wouldn't have even counted.
I'm glad you brought that up because, can you imagine if Wilson had actually connected on that? It was a pretty nice throw to the back of the end zone. It was very close to being caught. Can you imagine if the backup goes in, throws that one, and it's called back because Kenny Lawler, your highest paid receiver, your all-star guy, is offside? And that just goes back to, they had a damn procedure penalty in the first play of the game. And at that point, I leaned over to you and just said, that is a bad omen. For all the confidence and the professionalism and the preparation, to have that happen on the first play of the championship game, it got my spidey senses tingling, and that was another example of it later on in the game when they really could have used a big play. Here's a little bit more from Zach Collaros. And listen, Zach said 3 miserable straight Grey Cup games. He's, I believe, the first quarterback ever to be in 6. He's got a couple MOPs. He's got rings. But these last 3 have been ugly. And he was just asked about his mental state after another real tough game in the big one.
Mentally, you're kind of exhausted from just the way it all ended. Disappointed, frustrated. You always want to play better. I've said this to you before, Jeff. As the quarterback, a lot of times you think if you just do one thing differently, everything can kind of change, and it's the hardest part is, think about every single play and all that. You could drive yourself crazy. That being said, mentally, I think I'm in a pretty good space. I'm a very, very blessed individual. I'm a part of a great organization. Obviously, the work environment that I get to come to every day is second to none. How much I care for my family and how lucky I think I am for that. Because I get to go home and see my wife and my children every day, and I had so many people come out to the game to support me, and so many calls and everything. I'm in a good space, man.
One more from Zach, and this is a bit of a shorter clip, but this is interesting. Zach was asked just when he returned into the game, down 8 after the Argos had scored that touchdown, having his finger frozen and stitched up, what he said in the huddle after coming back in.
Yeah, I just don't want anything to sound like an excuse.
Right.
OSHA said it now. He knows that I was having trouble gripping the ball. So I said, listen.
Have trouble.
You gotta, don't expect the ball to be far enough out there for you gotta come back for the ball. It's probably not gonna get there.
That was man, that's a tough one to listen to, the final one, because that is exactly what happened on that first ball that went up that really completely tipped the scales to the Argos' favor, and it was a play that the Bombers never really recovered from, and it just got worse from there.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder about, should he have even been in the game if he's saying can't grip the ball, and I've gone over this already in this conversation. And you look back at last year when they put Adam Bighill in after injury and he had to leave the game. Is this coaching staff capable of making these tough decisions when guys are hurt, who are your guys, you want to be loyal to them. But if you can't contribute to win, haven't been able to make the tough call and say, hey, you know what, let's put someone else in, because the last two they've had to make, or they haven't been able to make that decision. It's kind of backfired on them. I mean, would it have been different? They would have put in Terry Wilson or Jake Dolegala. Would they still have lost? Like, probably, but I don't know. I don't think it would have. I think it was. I think Jeff described it as a car crash in his tweet, saying went over and over again. I mean, the interception after interception when you can't really throw is a tough look, Huss. And just hearing this just makes it tough. And you wonder, did they put themselves in the best position to win with the decisions that were made? And I don't know if they did. And would it have been different? I'm not sure, but it's about giving yourself the best chance. And is Zach Collaros with a lacerated finger that's frozen in stitches? Doesn't seem like he was anywhere close, like to 90%.
Yeah, no, not even, not at all. And I know Gregory had mentioned to us, like, hey, Huss, Remis, Jake Dolegala was there. Jake Dolegala was, I mean, a third string, basically emergency quarterback from what it seems like. I mean, Terry Wilson was the guy they went out afterwards, and he didn't inspire any confidence in everyone. And, there's that old saying, dance with the person that brought you there. At a certain point, if you're at the dance and the person that brought you there has a broken leg and can't dance anymore, you may have to go find a new dance partner. And I mean, I still regret, and we could go back in the clips on this program, we were talking about the situation of the Bombers quarterback after Strevler went down, knowing, what was there. And again, they got Dolegala, who did have some CFL experience. And, listen, I think if they went with either of those guys, it probably ends up being the better decision at the end. I just don't think they had any confidence in either of those guys, and that is what made him. We could talk about the loyalty and all that. I really do think that if they thought they had a better option than an injured Zach Collaros, he's probably in the game. But they didn't have that, and that's why I bring up the scenario if Drew Brown is still on this team. If this same thing happens a year ago, I think Drew Brown is the guy. But I don't think they had that afterwards, and that's going to be that'll be a big topic personnel-wise, because, of course, the quarterback situation, Remo, going into this offseason is more than just Zach Collaros being the starting quarterback next year, which in all likelihood he will be. I think probably 100% he will be, at least to begin the season. But, I mean, Zach's getting on in age. This is his final year of his contract. They have to also be thinking, who's next for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but also who's next if Zach Collaros can't play in a big game. They didn't have a guy that could come in and win them a playoff game, unfortunately, and certainly they felt that way. I don't think that they did. And that's another regret, I think, that's not necessarily on the head coach, but probably on Kyle Walters, who builds the team. I see Natalie from Winnipeg. By the way, Natalie, thanks for coming out last night. It was great to meet you. Natalie had said, it's not fair to Wilson, who's new to the CFL, to be a backup, up to team leadership to find a way to have a better backup plan or really train and prepare someone for the job. I mean, I'm sure they thought that they had trained and prepared someone for the job. But, man, when Terry Wilson came in, it was sketchy there. And as I said, they were fortunate to get that 3 points after a ball that should have been picked. I guess that's the last we'll be hearing from Zach or Brady for a while. But, those are one of a very few number of players, Remo, as we went through yesterday, that actually have contracts with Winnipeg next year. And, I mean, man, our conversations over the next few months as to who will be coming back, I think, are going to be interesting. Willie Jefferson, coming off of a monster performance in the Grey Cup game, after, honestly, a quieter year by his standards, was busy yesterday tweeting highlights from the game and then said, last year's price ain't the same price.
Yeah, I'll just wrap up Jake Dolegala last year with Saskatchewan, he had some big games throwing, 429-yard game, 400-yard game, 326-yard game. Could they have given? I mean, they were fighting to the first in the end, so I don't think there was really opportunity in the regular season to get him time, but could they have trusted him more? And if they didn't, and T. Will raises the point, if they had no confidence in Wilson, why were they dialing up passes for him, which I think is a valid question as well. Moving forward, though, and Zach did say about next year and his future, he is under contract. He did have to talk about it with his wife, and I think the concern for him, Huss, was he's got a young family, moving back and forth with young children, certainly tough. But, he said the finger won't impact him going forward, but I can't see him not coming back with the Grey Cup being here. He's got one more year left under contract. I feel like he would be back. And yes, Willie Jefferson, a number of players who are up for renewal, was heavily retweeting Grey Cup highlights and did comment last year's price ain't the same price, maybe implying, hey, maybe, they lost. They lost after last year, wanted to get back at it and took a bit of a discount to return. And now he's like, hey, my career's kind of winding down too. I want to maximize my earning potential here. And we'll see what happens. I mean, he was a big part. He's got a ton of pressure. Could have been, if the Bombers were to hang on, could have been MOP conversation. And there's some tough decisions coming up here for Kyle Walters.
Willie's an interesting dude. He loves the social media game, and he's always been a guy that'll throw stuff out. This is, I guess, just a little bit of negotiating. I'll say this. Willie was pretty quiet this season, by his standards. Now, part of it was the defense that Jordan Younger was bringing. When they're rushing three, you get a lot more focus and attention on a guy like Five. But I will say this. I can't imagine there's anywhere else in the Canadian Football League that will pay Willie the money that the Bombers will pay him, in addition to the marketing opportunities that he has as one of the most tenured and popular long-term players here in Winnipeg. So I would expect Willie to be back. We might just be talking about some cryptic tweets on social media and X in the meantime before something gets done. Obviously, we'll have a little bit more on the end of the season, but now we're getting into free agency. Now we're getting into movement around the league. Maybe we'll have to touch base with one of the guys at Edmonton, get a Wannock on over the next couple days to talk about Ed Hervey coming in and where the Elks go from here. Is Rick Campbell going to be the next guy following in the footsteps of his father in Edmonton? And, of course, Buck Pierce's future and whether he, as Farhan's reporting, is the number one choice of the BC Lions and could potentially be leaving a pretty big hole at the OC position here in Winnipeg. We'll hope to have Coach O'Shea's final comments for the season tomorrow or the next day here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. All right, geez, we've gone long, but man, we had so much good to talk about coming out of the hockey game. Great stuff with Ken and John, and great job by Remis getting some of the key bits from both Brady and Zach Caleros. But we're not done until we get to the Coolbet lines. And, man, it was fun. We didn't do a lock shop today because they were carrying the Ed Hervey press conference down at Commonwealth. But you get Dusty and Huss back together and bang. The EST parlay hits plus 360 and the WST parlay hit at plus 400. Shout out to Mark Scheifele, Gabriel Velarde, and Josh Morrissey. You all had points and the Jets won. That was very nice. And, man, we were a shootout goal shy of running the table yesterday, only losing our other one on a shootout goal by the Calgary Flames, who beat the Islanders in the skills competition. Tonight, however, heading over to the National Hockey League, we've got 5 games. The Carolina Hurricanes are a big road favorite, minus 214 in Philly against the Flyers at plus 180. Straight up pick 'em between the Golden Knights and the Leafs in Toronto. Minus 109 on either side. The Dallas Stars, you're not going to see many bigger favorites than this year. Minus 438 at home against the San Jose Sharks. Sharks plus 345. The Predators are actually favored on the road in Seattle against the Kraken. Nashville minus 141. The Kraken plus 120. And Buffalo is in LA to take on the Kings. Sabres plus 148. The Kings minus 175. While we're at it, let's check out the Cup odds right now. The Oilers are still the favorite for the Stanley Cup, and to be honest, that does not make a lot of sense to me. They're not the same team that they were last year. Now, do they have the best player in the world? Yeah. Do they have the most high-end talent? Probably. We'll see how this works out. They're plus 750. Canes favorites to win the East at plus 850. I got to say, though, the Florida Panthers, Remis, look like they are more than ready to make another run through the East. They're 9-1. The Rangers are at 10-1. The Dallas Stars are at 10-1. And then you've got the number one team in the standings, the Winnipeg Jets, who started off at 25-1, went to 20, and are now at 12-1, along with the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Avalanche 14-1, along with the Devils, and the Vegas Golden Knights at plus 18.
Yeah, the Jets not really getting a lot of respect as the number one team. One team that's pretty low, who's had a great start, Minnesota Wild, 22-1. We know they can never get it done in the playoffs. They haven't advanced past the first round in quite some time, but they're off to a great start. Kaprizov's playing at Hart Trophy level, and we'll be seeing the Wild at the next WST night in December. But if you're looking for a lower one, maybe that's interesting. But the Jets, they never get any respect. They could be first in the league and still have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th best odds to win the cup. So I guess it's just an opportunity, right? Yeah,
it's exactly. It's just an opportunity. And I mean, hell, last year when the Jets had the great run, they started off at like 55-1 or 50-1. I mean, they're with Buffalo, and I mean, obviously they didn't get that high this year. They're just opening at 25-1, but 12-1 right now for Winnipeg. And yeah, Minnesota, we're going to see them next Monday. The Wild, 12-3-3 right now on their season. 7-2-1 in their last 10. Goal differential of plus 18. The Jets with by far the best goal differential in the National Hockey League at plus 34. The only other teams really that are close are the surprising Capitals at plus 28 and those Carolina Hurricanes at plus 27. Even for their great record at 12-6-1, the Panthers are only plus 7 on the year, and the Leafs are only plus 8. So every number, every metric will tell you the Jets are a hell of a good hockey team. But again, it's going to take until the playoffs to still maybe convince people that they have what it takes to do in the postseason. And that would be the biggest question moving forward. But in the meantime, there's a lot of work to be done to get there and to put themselves in a great spot for it. As far as the rest of Coolbet goes, what are we kicking in the exclusives today? We do have a little DGen Den parlay in the lock shop. What do we got? Forsberg and Neckash, both to get a point. Konechny and Dahlin, both to have 3+ shots on goal. And the Stars to win in regulation is 8-1. I'll jump in on that. And then NFL, which gets going again tomorrow. The first place Pittsburgh Steelers. Still can't get over. That was the most Steeler win ever. No touchdowns and beating the Ravens last week, Reem. They're in Cleveland as a 3.5-point favorite. Kind of surprising that an 8-2 team is only 3.5-point favorites against a 2-8 team. But when those AFC North teams get together, you can't often throw the records out the window.
I think Cleveland's also performed a lot better now that they have a real quarterback in Jameis Winston. They're able to move the ball and put points on the board. That definitely helps.
They got pumped by the Saints last week. I mean, I'm not sure that we're.
I mean, that's fair, but sure. Hey, if you're saying the home is 3 points, then what is it, 6.5? So still a touchdown. Yeah. I do like, man. I like Russ with the Steelers. Seems to be a good fit for them, and they have this defense. They just need a capable veteran quarterback who's not going to turn it over and can make the deep throw. And he's fit in nicely, but not a huge total in that game, though. They're at 37 points.
Yeah, no doubt. It could be a maybe not the most exciting game, but anyways, sign me up for it. We've got 2 days until the Jets are back at it, taking on Pittsburgh on Friday and then Nashville on Saturday. Hey, just go quickly on that. If you haven't played a Coolbet before, use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. And next Tuesday is the next WST EST Lock Shop Poker Tourney. We had Randy D represent the crew so well, finishing second in the last one. Remis formerly finishing second. I think I had my worst of the 3 performances last week. But check out our socials. We'll put out the details for the tournament, how to get in. If you've been in it before, join us again. If you haven't, man, it's been so much fun. It's going to start at 9 p.m. next Tuesday. Another Lock Shop Poker Open over at Coolbet. Just go to Coolbet, click on Poker, download the Poker app. It'll definitely help you run everything smoothly. And then you just go into tournaments, go to Tuesday, or search Lock Shop, Click in, register, reserve your spot, and we'll see you next Tuesday for another poker tourney, which should be a blast stream.
Yeah, they've been fun. Shout out to Randy. I see he renamed his YouTube name Randy River. That was what they were calling him on his run to second place in the last one. So I gotta get practicing here. I've had a really bad, maybe not bad. I was maybe getting a little aggressive, and it caught up to me. But we'll see how it goes. Still trying to get back to second place where I finished on the first one.
You bet. All right. I guess Murat's going to join us tomorrow. That should be a fun conversation. Really looking forward. I mean, I could talk about yesterday's game for another week, but we'll be moving on to this upcoming 6-game road trip. I believe the longest of the year, and then back for 1 game and like 3 more on the road. I mean, a heavy dosage of road games, which I'm fine with, which should be a fun December and January at Canada Life Center. And speaking of that, on the way out, Remo, what did you? I know you were a big fan of the Dancing Gabe top 10 moments in Canada Life Center history yesterday.
Yeah, that was an awesome feature. I did tweet them out. I was just keeping track of them, and I gotta be honest, they showed all these great moments, great concerts, and I felt very fortunate to have been at so many of them. Some great events, I even forgot I went to a couple UFC events there, which was pretty cool to take in. But here was Gabe's list. The first 5, I didn't catch the order, but the AHL All-Star Game, I think I still have the program and ticket from that somewhere. The Women's Worlds, which you've spoken about so glowingly, Calder Cup Final. I do remember the first Moose 2.0 game. I was there for that. I believe Peter Budaj started for the Ontario Reign. And the first Jets preseason game, which they showed footage of. And if anyone at the Jets ever wants to release that game, the broadcast in its entirety, in full HD quality, please do that. We don't have a proper version out there. The one that is on YouTube is like screen recorded and looks terrible. So if the Jets ever want to do that, please let us know. And the next 5, the Jets Hall of Fame nights, you had Howard Chuck, you had the Solani Newman one, you had the Hotline one, the first hockey game at Canada Life Center, that was the first Moose one, the Whiteout Returns 2015, the 2018 playoffs, and first game versus Montreal. I thought Gabe nailed it with his hockey moments. I mean, whatever concert moments you want to put, subjective, but some great ones that I even pulled out. Was talking in the Discord about some. I pulled out some pictures from like 2007 when I was going a lot, like every show I went then. So some great memories in that building.
Yeah, no doubt. And he was mixing in all of his favorite moves as well as he dropped the numbers. It was really cool. And speaking of, this is a great way because we do have to finish and get this podcast up. People are going to want to listen to it. But Remo, grab that pic that I tweeted out. A special guest joined us up in 316, knowing that the Winnipeg Sports Talk crew was up there with all of our folks, and it was none other than Dancing Gabe. We got a great pick with the WST team. We missed Connor last night. Of course, he was on a flight coming back from Vancouver at the Grey Cup, but it was great to have Liz with us, myself, you, and then the legend himself, Gabe, in the middle. And he came, put smiles on everyone's faces, did a bunch of fist bumps, gave us some good vibes, and then the Jets carried it out and got the win last night against the defending Stanley Cup champions. Great night. Thanks again to everyone that came out for our WST game of the month. The next one, December 21st, Saturday night, Minnesota Wild. Grab your friends, get your tickets, winnipegjets.com/WST, and we will look forward to seeing you then. Great show today. Great game last night. Murat and much more on the Jets as they hit the road tomorrow on the program. Make sure to join us live at 1 p.m. on YouTube if you can. And otherwise, check out the podcast at your convenience. When you're at YouTube or if you're here right now, make sure you've hit that sub button. We're over 12K, on our way to 13 right now. And hit that thumbs up as well, if you wouldn't mind, before you go. Thanks to John Shannon. Thanks to Ken Wiebe. Thanks to all the sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. And great work with Remis getting all that Bomber audio to wrap Bomber season, and the final comments from Zach Caleros and Brady Oliveira. It's going to do it for us today. Have a great night tonight. Be careful for all of our friends in Western Manitoba with the roads and the weather you're dealing with right now. one way or another. We'll see you tomorrow right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk as the Jets hit the road for 6. Have a great one, everyone.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.